Welcome to the October anime of 2022. This has been an interesting month. Not so interesting in horror anime, but interesting with regards to other anime. However, this is the Halloween season. And there were 5 animes I went over. But before I do that, I'll just introduce who I am. Short, very short. I do anime, I do manga, and I do mostly games. And every now and again, I discuss a little bit about those things and how you could do those things, such as adding art critique on certain things, as well as how to do certain things within the anime, the manga, or mostly gaming. How you could do certain artwork within those things. Now, typically, how-to videos on how to do certain things will be channel specific, primarily catered towards those things. But this channel isn't how to teach you how to do something. This is more like a how to when you're playing something, as sort of recommendation for you to be able to do better at something, or to get ideas that you could take from while you're playing the game, or while you're watching anime, or while you're reading a manga. And I basically identify these things so you could say, okay, this person has identified those things. Let's see if I could experiment with what this person is saying. So that's basically a channel in a nutshell. It's not really a tutorial channel. It's more like you watch games, you read the anime, or you watch the anime, you read the manga, and then you take it from there on forth based on what I'm saying. So that's basically this channel. Now, moving on from that, we'll get straight into the animes for October of 2022. So there were 5, to be honest with you. Actually, there were more like 3. 2 of them, one was Berserk, was already done a long time ago. And then they did a memorial edition for Berserk. And Berserk can be considered a Halloween spooky anime because there was spooky stuff in Berserk. But unfortunately, Berserk wasn't something that was recently released. And for the October anime of 2022, it has to be something that was recently released in October of 2022, or by, I would say, a month back, September 2022. If I couldn't find October 2022, I wanted to find something horror-like or scary-like in September 2022, but no further back. So I could not. I found these things. I found like 5 most, and out of those 5, there were technically only 3. What else can I say with regards to that? Nothing else. Now, the 3 that I found out of the 5, or should I say the last one that I didn't select, other than Berserk, was another anime that I thought would have been worked as a horror anime. And I guess you could check it out if you want. And the hell was it? Hard for me to remember now since I went over the ones I want to go over. Well, what I'm trying to say is there are only 3 that were actually recently released. Forget the Berserk and forget that other one I don't remember. The 3 important ones are Danji C, which is Housing Complex C, not including with this October anime because that ending was bad, very bad. And the second one was Exception, which is more, after I watched the whole thing, was more like a sci-fi suspense, not so much horror. The horror was mostly psychological or mental. And then the third one was also not so much horror. It was mostly action pack, My Hero Academia type stuff. But since it had a lot of blood, guts, and it's relating to things that has to do with hell and devils, then that was included as a horror anime like. Now, all animes for October that released in October 2022, out of all the animes that were actually truly horror, Housing Complex C was actually truly horror. However, I did not put Housing Complex C on this October list for 2022 because Housing Complex C ending was bad. Bad to the point is there was no bad guy in that anime. And why I'm saying there was no bad guy in that anime is because there was a bad guy in the anime, and the bad guy was humans. However, the humans weren't portrayed as the terrible thing throughout the entire anime. This ominous thing hanging in the background was considered the enemy. Until the last episode, you come to realize that human beings were actually the enemy. The stupidity of human nature was actually the real bad guy. And the horror stuff that came in the anime came at the end. The truly bad stuff came at the end. The last episode, to be honest with you. So every now and again, you get a touch of little horror stuff throughout it, but at the end, it was the human beings. Why is that not considered to be on this list? Well, because one, it's basically saying nature is the governing body of things. And if you screw with nature, nature will screw back with you. And there was no demons or devils or nothing. It was simply nature itself, or a god that's supposed to represent nature. And this god was considered the evil entity of the anime. But at the end, it would prove that it's not evil. It's just doing what nature wants it to do. Have balance. So there is no true evil person in the anime that you're trying to fight against. The only thing that you were trying to, the story is trying to tell you is that the evil entity was the nature of human beings. And I guess you could say it delivered on that part, but at the same time, it did not, because the whole point of the story was to find out who the truly evil monster was. And turns out that the evil monster that was occupying the whole thing wasn't what you thought it was, which is fine, but it really wasn't, because it turns out that the truly terrifying thing is simply all about balance. It's not like a Michael Myers. It's not like an aliens. There's no horrible entity, or it's not like zombies that you're trying to destroy. It's simply a thing that's actually the good guy of the story. Nature is fighting back, or something like that. So you can't really call it horror if it's just doing what it's doing to survive. Um, and there's also the factor that children were used to represent this evil thing on both sides. The children of the horrible human side, a child was used to represent the most evil of nature of human being, and on the side of the god, a child was also used to represent what everyone was considered a wicked thing throughout the entire anime. Now, I'm not down with that when you use children to represent evil. That was what really threw me out of the anime. That little kids were being portrayed as the most evil thing of all times. Specifically, little kids who basically turn other people into nothing but blood goo and ash and mutate them into like horrific things. And you see this physically. Not to mention children also turning themselves into blood goo. And you see this. And I say, wait a minute. So we have murderous children, and then we have children that actually kill other children. And you're seeing this, but the anime is technically trying to telling you that it's not really child doing this. You know, it's a god, but the god is using the child's body to do the thing. So it's technically, even it's not really a child, but it's still a child you're visually seeing. That left an incredibly bad taste in my mouth. So I say, screw that anime. You know, the lead up from the beginning of the first episode all the way to the end was fine, and they dropped the ball at the end. They dropped the ball. I don't care who says what about that anime. You don't use children to represent evil. You don't say like, oh, there's this horrible thing you got to catch. Turns out it's just people. You know, I would have been fine with that, but then It turns out the most wicked of the people was a little kid. That didn't sit well with me. Not to mention how it ended. No, there was no conclusion to the story. There was no resolution. The God won. All the human beings died, and the God is just going to be there, and it's going to do the next thing to the next couple of human beings who will come to that location and violate that land or something like that. So it's not a happy ending, but it's not a terrible ending. Like if you do a Michael Myers and Michael Myers is still alive after you think he's dead, that's okay. But if you do a story where it doesn't matter how people go to the location, everyone's going to get killed regardless. Because for some reason, the power of this God makes people turn against each other or awakens the nature of people's wickedness. And then, unless you don't have good morals or good logical characterization about yourself, you won't survive. Now, the most deformed person of all these people managed to survive. The person you thought was the mass murderer turns out to be the worst looking person of the entire anime, who you thought was a mass murderer. Turns out to be the most innocent, and he managed to survive at the end. So it's like the anime picked the most innocent thing and turned it into the most wicked thing, and turned the most wicked looking person and most evil looking person in the entire anime and made them the most innocent person in the entire anime. So I want to know how the hell that works when you can make the person who obviously are the most evil look like it plays that the person is the most innocent, and the person who is the most innocent is the most evil, basically turning the child into the worst and turning the mass serial killer looking dude that's big and buff and to the most innocent person. Basically, anime is telling you looks can be deceiving, but there's no child in this world that's evil. That's something that's produced by human beings. Human beings do that, and the child fall through that. It's up to people to make children not behave that way. That's why I'm going on and on about that and not getting into the two animes about that I did select. So I just want to leave it right there to state what that is before anyone get into that anime. If you don't like the exception I'm going to state right now, or if you don't like Chainsaw Man, the two that I selected for October, go and check out Housing Complex C. However, I think you might be disappointed with regards to the ending of Housing Complex C. If you're not, then that's on you, and then you could go watch that. But I didn't add that into my October 2022 review because it did not stand the test of time as an overall something that I could see that would continue on as a franchise. I could see there being more stories to Exception. I could see there being more stories to Chainsaw Man. I cannot see there being more stories to Housing Complex C. It so what would happen if they make another Housing Complex C? More people are gonna die at that location by the god. It don't make sense. If you're going to have a hero and a villain, you know, and if this thing is the hero, how can it not behave like the nature that it does? Because all it's going to do is do the same thing it does. It would kill people in order to preserve what is or to keep peace. So if the answer to solving and to keeping peace is to murder people, then this thing isn't really good at all. So the good thing isn't really good. So that's what I'm trying to say. So moving on from that garbage, I'm going to go. It's not really garbage, but it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth that you could just use children like that to represent true evil or represent truly balance. Balance. So you're saying balance just murders everyone, or evil just murders everyone? Makes no sense. Not in my book, anyway. Especially if you're using little kids to represent that. That revolts me in a way. So moving on from that, I'm going into what is now the anime. So I'm going to skip those introductions, and you could skip those and go straight towards these pings. I'm going to put pings within this anime to show on the timeline where you could skip from those things I stated with regards to Housing Complex C and right into this anime. So the very first thing of this anime, and this anime is called Exception. So I'm going to say Chainsaw Man at the end, but this anime is called Exception, and it's a decent horror anime, and it's a decent sci-fi anime, and it's very well written, and it's very well voiced acted, and the story is good. I have given this anime an 8.4. And if you're talking about story wise as 8.4, in my opinion, this is better than that movie Event Horizon. Or, no, not Event Horizon. It's better than that movie Edge of Tomorrow. Whereas Edge of Tomorrow had interesting action and interesting story with regards to time and interesting character development of Tom Cruise dying over and over again. It had about 3 to 5 things that were interesting in that movie, but everything else was subpar. So this, however, had far more interesting things than that has as a story overall. The action is what kept Edge of Tomorrow fresh. The idea of dying over and over and then coming back and solving the puzzle was what kept that movie interesting. This anime, however, has more to play with and more human emotions and more characterization than a movie ever will have. And I will prove it. First things first, um, to do the synopsis, which I'm doing right now. The beginning of this anime shows a ship. First, it shows blackness, so pretend like the screen is blackness. And then slowly, the resolution starts to come in, and the fading in from the blackness starts to show sky and stars and everything around here. And then slowly in the distant background, the ship is slowly zooming in. So it's a pan in of the ship, but it's more like a pan in of this red object. And as this red object keeps getting closer and closer, it slowly starts fading in size away, and then you start seeing the full design of the ship. And this is the ship, and it's designed like a fish. Now, this anime is considered bio cyberpunk or biopunk or chempunk. If you don't like bio, you could use chem. If you don't like chem, you could use bio. Or if you don't like either, you could use science punk. What that means is that typically cyberpunk has to do with metal and lots of flashy colors and grungy environments. Science punk is the reverse of that. Things are very organized, a lot of colors, but hardly any metals. Everything else is biological in form and in design. Yes, metal exists, but it's meant to look organic. So, organic, fancy color, and what did I say? Cyberpunk. Oh yeah, grunginess. So there's no grunginess. There's more organization. There's colors, and to replace the metal is bio. So that's the thing that's going to be represented there. So the anime first begins with the credits showing the form of black liquid, and it's shown right here, followed by chimes of beats of creepy music and mirroring effects of ink duplication. So this ink is basically duplicating. And then from there, you see other things within the credits, such as this image right here. And this image is represented by duplication of what the anime is going to be about. Basically, human duplication or duplication of life, or the whole process of this anime is to um, create life within other planets beyond Earth by using the duplication process of plants and other forms of materials. But it's also about duplication of many other things, including human beings, using various type of science of this world by the, I guess you could call it the Earth Human Development Organization. That's what it's called within this anime. And so once you go past that, you then, from there, you assume that the butterfly, which is represented here, is something like a butterfly effect, something similar to the mind's mirror replicating themselves, and the sea of consciousness that will be explored in the anime in a distinct and original way. This does not happen, of course. Um, this is not that type of anime, though it has aspects of thoughts and ideas related to that anime. This anime is sci-fi and horror, philosophy, and um, psychoparanatural story in space, where the fate of humanity lies within the development of new colonization after a war-torn Earth left many scientists desperate to save their species from itself, or at least from the tyrants who don't care about wiping themselves out to total oblivion. So that's what's happening. And then you move on to, um, I guess, move on to the next scene, or you should say the first appearance of the anime is something that leads more towards modern version of. I mean, how would I describe this? This is modern version of our modern version of terrible CGI from past anime to formula into something that's more well defined now, or bad CGI from the past that's more tuned and fine tuned now than it was in the past. For instance, imagine Aeon Flux from the past. Aeon Flux was an interesting anime, but it wasn't done as refined as you want to. And then there was 3D style anime following the same Aeon Flux type of style anime and image of characters. And that's what the characterization and the design in this anime reminds me. A lot of drawn and cell coloring are that of Aeon Flux or that of Final Fantasy VI by Yoshitaka Amano, which I should state right now is the person that developed the characters in this anime. Um, all the characters are very distinct and they very represent Amano's style. Now, Amano has been doing anime since, I wouldn't say anime, but character illustration since Final Fantasy 1, all the way to Final Fantasy 6. And then he went on to do logos proceeding from Final Fantasy 6 forward. So this guy has a distinct art style and it's been in the game for a very long time. So it's not like he's a newbie. So if you see characters look a certain way based on his art style, you'll know that this is Amano because he does that, skinny type characters with funny type faces and narrow eyes and narrow jaws and that type of stuff. Um, this anime is also reminiscent of something like Cyberpunk Oedo 20 uh, Cyberpunk Oedo something 0080, and some of the characters, actually one specific character looks like Locke from Final Fantasy VI. Um, this is all Yoshida's art style. So moving on from the giant fish in the sky, and we're now coming into the credits, and then moving on for the credits, you just then see this like little uh, feather in the sky, and it's floating down. It starts the beginning of the anime. Um, let's see here. So I wrote all this down, and I'm making sure I'm following the story. So this feather shows, and then the story picks up in solar. Should I say? Well, let me see. Blah 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 blah. What I wrote. Okay. So this feather flies in, and it shows as it landing on the ground. A woman comes from a chamber, and in this chamber, she's completely naked and stuff. Basically waking up from something like cryo sleep, but it's not cryo sleep. It's the bioorganic development of human cells, a human duplication. So basically, she's created, to be honest with you. And as she wakes up, she comes directly out. She wakes up. She doesn't have this color on her hair, right here and here, and these colors around her eyes, or even this lipstick or anything. None of this thing is on her. That's because these are style that she has chosen because this is her character. She enjoys this color and enjoys his style. She was completely naked. She comes out of the womb, so it's called in this anime a development process for creating duplicating human beings, and she steps out later into the anime. After she steps out, she stands next to a device, and next to this device, she's basically saying, "Okay, I'm awake. I've checked my vital signs. I've checked my health. I've checked to see if um, there's any discrepancies with regards to the ship. I've also checked if both my eyes, my taste, my sound, my hearing, as well as my motor functions in my body are all working. If there are any forms of bacteria or anything from the time I was created that's unstable." The machine basically tells her that she's 100% fine, which means her processing went through and she was developed as a full duplicated human being without any instability. The machine also tells her all her transferred brain functions from her backup system of her memories have been stabilized since the last time she went into sleep. So basically, the moment she went into cryo sleep, and she's basically still in cryo sleep, the duplication process for her life happened some years later. So we're in the future some years later, and the machine tells her that depending on how far and how many years it's been since she's been in cryosleep, the machine, the womb, basically was supposed to develop people, her. I guess I would say a couple of years, maybe 10 years, 20 years, depending. The anime didn't say 100% sure. It did say, however, the people who were in cryosleep are supposed to wake up 100 years after um, they reach the planet that's been cultivated. So these people who are reviving are basically duplications of those who are in cryosleep. So imagine it this way. You go to sleep, right? You go to bed or you go to sleep and you put into a cryopad. And then everything about your memories and who you are right before you went to sleep or during the process of you going to sleep, whatever remained, gets stored in a device of your last memory, of the last thing you did when you were awake before you went to sleep. And then it also made a body similar to your own, from the tiniest strands on your hair, on your hands, to the most complex thing that's within your heart or your lungs, or even like your eyes, your retinals, as well as your brain functions and all your neurons in your brains and everything down from your cortex all the way to your stem, as well as your spine and everything. All these things have been recorded, duplicated, and processed over the years. And I mean years, I mean lots of time before it could fully make one human. And eventually, that thing was considered within the system of the machine called the womb. And the womb is able to develop and make people faster based on that information of processing. So the womb is kind of like this miracle type speedy duplication reanimation process or development process of a human being. That's why they call it the womb. And it's a type of biological creation that they made way back on Earth before the wars and stuff. So basically, the womb created and duplicated her. It basically duplicated her just like you see in here, straight from the womb, which is the center. And after doing so, she then went to wake up all the others within the ship. And the same thing happens. Um, everyone got up, everyone got out of their pods, or got out of the womb, walked off butt naked just like they do. And she came across at least one of them first. And the first person she came across is a guy named Mack. And Mack is the guy that's with the short hair. And he's the one that looks most like Yoshitaka Amano's character from the Final Fantasy VI franchise, or all the Final Fantasy VI, as well as Patty, who resembles that of many characters from Final Fantasy as well, um, especially from his illustrations. Now, moving forward from that, after Nima takes a syringe, um, she then does more tests on herself to see if she's okay. Lewis, however, I would say Lewis springs to life. No, Lewis comes later on after. I should be honest with myself. Lewis comes later on after. So what happens after all the characters are awakened? Patty, this guy name is Oscar, and then Mack, and of course her name is Nina, who is the main girl at the beginning. So Nina. So we have here Nina, we have Mack, we have Oscar, and we have Patty. Those are the names of the characters who are on the ship, and there's one more. The last one is called Lewis. So there are basically five people that are supposed to be awake, to considered, or not to consider, but to concentrate on the development of the planet, terraforming of, I guess, I don't remember the name of the planet, but the terraforming of this planet that they found that could be done, the terraforming of, uh, I guess, what it's called at the beginning of the anime. They described it as the beanstalk. They call it the beanstalk, and the beanstalk is basically this huge, mass-produced and compressed pile of hundreds of thousands of different seeds stored into a container, which is within the ship's womb, which is different from the womb that does processing or duplication of human, but it's almost kind of like the same thing. But the womb, however, has two processes. One is to duplicate people right away, and the other is to just to store information, which is the storing of information is called um, the beanstalk. Basically, everything like different seeds are being kept on the ship, and they're all stored within one mass-produced area and contained. And so, by looking at the planet that they're going to, they've arrived at the location, and they waked up from, not from cryo, but from duplication, and they're awake now, and so now they could go ahead with the processing of starting the terraforming system. So they're still getting used to being awake. They're evaluating the situation, and they're waiting to see what they should do next. However, um, a solar flare happens during the process of this. Something bad happens right before they're able to fully start the operations. I would say not exactly before, but during the process of them being too close, I guess. What they didn't see, the thing is, what they didn't completely think about with regards to the planet that they wanted to, I believe it's one of these, no, it's this planet. Was it this planet? No, it's this planet. They wanted to turn this planet here, right over here, into something similar to that of Earth. However, the sun, I believe, because this is, I think these planets are closer to their sun, or it could be far, depending on. I'm not exactly sure what the anime is going for with regards to how close they are from the sun. But regardless, what happened is the sun basically created this little mini solar flare ball um, on it. By for reasons I do not know, it just happens. And what happened directly after the solar flare knocked out their systems, and by knocking out their systems, they have to now restart the system that's on the outside, as well as some certain functions that were damaged on the inside. And another thing I would have to say with regards to the anime, other than the character designs and the outfits that you see on Nina, as well as the character and the outfits on every character, each character and the artwork of the characters in this anime are quite unique and quite different. They're all very different. For instance, Nina's outfit is that of a fish mixed with that of a shell. The shell will look like the conch shells of sea undersea life, and the scales on the side of her outfits look like that of fishes, as well as that on the pants. So this is very bioorganic punk, like I said before, biopunk or chempunk. I believe she's supposed to represent the bio style of everything, biological chemical side of everything, as well as everyone else. However, I would say there's a slight contradiction to what people say with regards to this anime. I believe this anime is split up into two types of punk, to be honest with you. One is biochemical punk, and the other is also cyberpunk. So the cyberpunk of the anime is not completely gone. Um, I would say this because Mack represents the more cyber of the cyberpunk rather than the biopunk. There's hardly anything Mack wears that represents biopunk. His appearance is more that of cyberpunk style. And the same can be said of Oscar as well. He doesn't represent truly biopunk, other than the type of colors he's wearing and the tattoos that he's symbolizing. Everything else on him is very much steampunk slash cyberpunk in style. Same goes for Mack as well. So these two are more steampunk slash cyberpunk, and the biopunk it would probably be Patty and Nina over here. So this anime, as much as people say is completely biopunk, it has traces of cyberpunk in it, especially from the character of Mack. And also to represent biopunk is the style of their spacesuits. So it has like this huge butterfly type design and color on the design of the spacesuit, which makes it very pretty to look. Now, you're saying when is the horror stuff coming into play in this anime? And here it is. The horror stuff comes into play in this anime once Nina goes towards Lewis's pod. Now Lewis was supposed to be the last of them in order to help with the revival process of the planet for which they are going to settle on, or humans are going to colonize on. Now Mack is like the engineer or bridge engineer of the crew, not like the engineer, but like the bridge crewman who's authorized to access certain things with regards to, I guess you could say he's like the ship's captain or something, if that makes any sense. He's a person in charge of the ship, but not truly. He's not really the person in charge of the ship. It's like he's been given more authority over the other people to be in charge of the ship. Um, but that goes all wrong when Nina goes to see why is Lewis's pod taking so long. Apparently, the solar flare damages the beanstalk. Well, not really the beanstalk. Well, damages the womb which housed the beanstalk and the processing machine for duplicating people. So when she was being duplicated, the radiation from the flare that did an electromagnetic wave, um, interfered with the machine itself, and whatever rate of radiation interfered with the machine, it caused discrepancy to the level of deformation within the character. The character's body was deformed, um, and it became the process that I started to think that, well, maybe this anime is all about coincidence. Maybe this anime is simply a duplication of something like Aliens, like the first Aliens movie. Um, they found something on the planet, they brought it back, and then it turns out it turns against them. Whereas in this case, they didn't find anything on the planet. It simply made the thing themselves, and then the sun eventually interfered with that thing and created the thing, the monster, which will eventually hunt them down and kill them. So that's where my head was with regards to this anime. But that turns out not to be the 100% of the case. Throughout the first 25% of the anime, that was the case, because this thing eventually became unsettling, hard to manage and hard to control. Now, she went towards a machine in order to see how she could cure him, how she could, Nina figured she could fix this deformity, or found out a way if if there's any traces of Lewis inside of this creature. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case, because she looked at his anatomy, and both his legs, his hands, even his head were all deformed. Whatever the machine did, the womb did, it totally turned his entire biological makeup into something quite different. Or basically, it couldn't hold the exact setup of his atoms together, and it was going all over the place. Hair follicles that were supposed to only pop up certain places on the head and on the body end up in many places that they weren't supposed to be, like on the arms and on the back. And ligaments that were supposed to be just a certain size end up being elongated in certain places and sharper in others. So he turns out to look like a monster in the end. Um, Eventually, they got to fix the machine, but then they got in a nice little group together and started to discuss what are they going to do about Oscar. I mean, what are they going to do about Lewis? So here's another nice little thing about this anime. The world of this anime, I shouldn't say the world, it's more like the ship of this anime is done quite well. It represents the biological or punk style very well as the monochrome type of setting with regards to the world as well. Um, Very organized, and that's how biopunk typically is. The colors aren't all over the place like cyberpunk is, like very graffiti like. Biopunk is very much monotone, monochrome in color, with some mix of, I guess you could say, uh, harmonious style. So if you don't want one or two colors, then you have to find other colors that are within harmony that blend with those colors to have complements, so to speak. So biopunk is very complementary in color schemes or monochrome. So that said, they went about their business to figure out, well, we either decide to terminate Lewis or we decide to keep Lewis alive. Eventually, it was 3 against 1, and Patty was overruled. And so Nina decides to take a syringe, and um, the syringe is not something that's good. It's something that's very bad, and Lewis is about to die. So Nina takes the syringe full with some type of whatever compound it is. Let's call it instant death or slow death, or basically paralysis, and then she is able to terminate the body with the next syringe, which will definitely kill him. Um, she then injects him with the first one to, to try to paralyze him, and then she went for the next one to inject him again to completely kill him off into his skin. But that didn't turn out to be the way things like everyone suspected it was going to go. This guy was going to die. That's it. They could continue on a mission, and they could duplicate another Lewis through the womb. Turns out it didn't go the way they wanted to. Lewis springs to life, ends up grabbing Nina by the head, kills her. Nina tries to take the syringe that would terminate his life and pull it. Unfortunately, she was in so much pain she's unable to do it, and he ended up killing her. So Nina's dead now, and that's how her life came to an end in the anime. However, like I said, the womb can duplicate people. So Nina isn't technically 100% dead. It's just this duplicated body of the real Nina is dead. And so it would shock you from the beginning when you think about, oh, damn, we already have one character down. But then if you really think about it, we're like, well, if she has backup of her memory, there's no such thing. These people can basically live forever if they want, transferring from body to body. So moving on from that, the dead monster is then seen in the corridor. Patty confronts it, trying to convince herself that it might still be Lewis. And then Mack, on the other hand, is telling Patty to get the hell out the way. It's not Lewis. It's a type of beast. He's deformed and stuff. And yeah, and then he eventually escapes. Um, Oscar, knowing his friend might be still alive in the body, um, decides to save him from execution. Um, but things does not go his way. Yeah. So based on what I wrote down, apparently Oscar tries to save him and let him go because for some reason he still thought that Lewis was someone in there. So Mack tried to kill him, but Oscar tried to save him. So in the next one, after we see Patty and Mack um, confronting Lewis, um, Dina's body is then taken by the womb and put back into the womb. She's then dissolved, and that ends the first episode of the anime. The next episode of the anime then shows a woman standing over a pad, like an iPad or something similar to that, some future pad, and she read the information that was left for her by the other crew members, or at least the information that was sent to her on her pad from the other crew members. And she came to the conclusion that she was killed. Um, she doesn't know this, however, because remember, every backup of the person who went into cryosleep was the last memory they had. So the current Nina, that all the actions that happened on the ship, once she was backed up and revived again as Nina, it would be as if she never had any confrontations or communications with anyone on the ship at all. The last thing she would remember is when she went to cryosleep. So this new Nina, I could basically call it her new Nina, has been up to speed with what happened on the ship in her absence. And apparently she was awake. She realized she was awake and she was killed. And she finds it very weird that these things are happening. How could she be killed if she wasn't on the ship? Um, it's very complicated and very hard to try to process you doing actions and you not knowing that you ever did an actions if you were never really there. So with each of these new human beings or duplication human beings, it's like they're being told a story of everything they've done, and they're trying to retrace their steps of the things that they've done. It's like being drunk and doing a lot of crazy stuff, but you don't remember anything from the night before, anything at all. You know, you could have crashed a car, you could have slugged a police officer, you could have, throw it up on the sidewalk, you could have tried to hold up a liquor store, you could have, said break up with your girlfriend or boyfriend, depending. All these things could have happened, and you wouldn't have known any of these things happened. The last thing you would remember is what you did before you got drunk. So that's how it is for someone like Nina. So moving on from that, we went into the next scene, and Oscar, or should I say Mack, Mack went to look for where Lewis might be within the ducts and everything, or a corridor. And Mack see the word help on something that looks almost like a heart, but it's not a heart. It's like an engine or a rotor engine or something like that. But it looks kind of like a heart. So he told everyone to come and check this out, and they all went to check it out, and they all agree with each other that this monster, this beast that's hiding or running from them, um, is not harmful. It's not going to kill them. And Mac is like, "Are you serious? We have to terminate this thing. Eventually, it'll try to kill us. If it becomes strong enough, we're all dead." And the whole idea of us trying to colonize this planet and bring life back to the human species, since our species is almost extinct on Earth due to our wars and our hazardous climate that's unstable, that no one could live on Earth anymore. Um, we have to do this. We have to find another planet for us to colonize on. Otherwise, there'll be nothing for us left, and our species will go extinct. So we have to destroy Lewis before he interrupts everything we're trying to do. However, Patty disagrees with this and say Lewis has a life. He cannot just take his life without his consent. Like, he has equal enough rights to live as any other species. So the first development of characterization of each of these characters can be summed up in either this moment or the moment where they all sat at the table to agree that what should they do with Lewis? It wasn't from the beginning of the anime. It wasn't from the moment Nina like saw her little teddy bear given from a little intercom recording of her true self before she went to cry sleep. It wasn't from any of these things. It was either more from the moment they sat at this table to decide what was going to happen, or from the very first conversation with regards to what is right, morally right, or what is morally wrong. And you could basically say it was more from this situation rather than agreeing to terminate Lewis' life based on what's morally right and wrong at that table, or the idea of colonization being the next thing that was brought up with regards to the conversation going on here in comparison to that of them having conversation on what to do with Lewis, was the idea of the colonization and everything of the planet wasn't part of the whole idea of killing Lewis until now. You're mixing two type of things together, like who is most right to kill and who is most right to save. So it's more like what's more important, the mission in saving millions or just to save one. So that's what's going on here. So they're racking the head, and you could basically say, well, that's not really characterization yet. You can't really say each of these have characters based on that. But yes, you can. You can say if someone truly believes in something to a fault, if they're willing to agree or do anything for that thing, you could say these characters represent their type of motivations and behaviors. And this will play deeper into the factor of capturing the deformed Lewis or the monster or letting him go. So this anime has now not only been an anime about a horrific monster that's going to try to kill you in the silence of space, but now based on moral choice, what is right and wrong. So that's opened up a can of worms for a different type of story that's being played out here, not just a sci-fi colonization story with now a monster running about the ship. So it's no longer like a surviving the monster story that's trying to ruin their plans. It's more of a moralist story going on now. What is right and what is wrong, and under this factor, they then decide, well, if this beast is if we could stop this beast from being violent, the only way we could possibly think about it stopping it from being violent and not trying to kill us and eat us or whatever is to feed it the food. Since it wants to eat food and since it needs food, because they saw a video of him trying to eat food, destroying the mess hall and everything, so they brought a lot of storage food in a container, and they were going to feed this food to him, which is a dumb thing, to be honest with you, because you don't know if the food is going to mutate his body or anything like some Resident Evil stuff. But that's not what the case. That's not what happened. They're just putting the food there as a decoy, a setup to draw the monster in, so they could corner it, knock it out, terminate it, end the story. Um, Everyone agrees to this. Obviously, Patty doesn't agree to it. But they say, no, it'll be fine. We corner it, we knock it out. We won't kill it. We'll just trap it and we'll keep it in a cage or something or lock it up so it can't get out. They, however, don't know the strength of this monster, so they're underestimating. So this is the part of the story I would say is kind of dumb in a way. You don't know the monster. You're just assuming. But remember, these are scientists. They're not. Their job is not to terminate things. They're not military people. Their job is to corner it, evaluate it, experiment on it, see what's going to happen. But trying to lessen any type of damage or not trying to kill anything. That these are who they are. They're engineers and they're scientists. Um, I'm not exactly sure if every one of them are engineers and scientists, but I'm pretty sure not a single one of them are military operatives, at least at the moment. Nothing has been revealed so far while I was watching the first three episodes. Moving forward, and the next scene you see is Lewis, not Lewis, Mack reflecting on his past, when he was a boy, to when he became a teenager, to when he became a young man, a young adult in his early 20s. Different accolades he got, different honors he got. He came from a very wealthy family, a very noble, militaristic type family. His father was a military man, So he had high expectations from his son. But he wasn't a normal son. His normal son were all brown hair people. He was adopted. So he had to not only, you know, um, be a good representative for his family, but he had to outdo his other family members in everything to show that even though he was adopted, he was a good representative of, I guess you could say, a person's legacy and heritage, um, more so than their own family members. Now, I believe that these two might actually be his brothers, because in the previous image it showed that he had brothers, and he always felt pressure on him simply because, um, I guess you could say, he had to live up to his old man's um, legacy or his motivations or his to make himself feel like he has some type of worth. But that aside, he then has a conversation with Patty, and you see a reflection of them in the ground. And there, in that reflection, comes the process of duplication, another more or less decision, and another, I guess, another theme that the anime is trying to tell you with regards to characters, the conversation that they're having, as well as the reflections of who they are based on what they're saying. So you would miss these things if you weren't paying attention to them. And now the next scene shows Mack meeting the monster again, and this time he decides to pick like it's the dumbest thing ever. He found like um, a pool table pin. I'd be like, okay, a stick, pool table stick, and he decided to use it against the monster. Since there are no weapons on the ship, it's completely ridiculous that he would use this, but there are no weapons on the ship. They're not allowed to have weapons on the ship. No flamethrowers, no nothing. This is a scientific exploration ship. And they're supposed to explore, take data, duplicate, and make life happen on another planet. They're not supposed to get into confrontations, and if they are going to get in confrontations, they got to run from it or find out a way to terminate it by using science, not anything made military wise. So those syringes that Nina was going to use, that's about the most dangerous thing on the damn planet. Um, the use of the chemicals that they have. So if they wanted, they could have easily put that into something, attach it to that little, uh, the little pig on the edge of his little pool stick, and then stuck it into Lewis, and then boom, dead. But that's not who they are. And the enemy is trying to emphasize that's not who these people are. And moving on to the next scene, we see more of that conversation with that of Nina and Patty. Now that they have finally captured Lewis, apparently what happened here is, I'm not 100% sure if they finally captured him, but I believe that they did. What happened here in this scene, Mack hits him on the leg, it breaks off, and then Mack is knocked out or fell to the floor. But at the same time, I believe Lewis, the deformed Lewis, fell off from the higher edge of the room, and then fell down and hit his head and got knocked out. And in this scene, he's then attached to the table, and then Patty say, "What the hell are you going to do?" Say, "We have to terminate him." And then Patty says, "Well, maybe you're right. We'll have to terminate him." So now I'm remembering it. They didn't capture him yet. It's just that Patty had gone back to try to stop Lewis again. Lewis was about to kill her, and then she realized, you know what, I got to be more realistic. If I keep this up, Lewis is going to kill me. At least the monster version of Lewis is going to kill me. So she's all in on terminating the deformed Lewis this time. So moving on to the next scene, we then see Dame going after Lewis again. So the entire first 2 to 3 episodes of this anime is about them trying to terminate Lewis, or should I say, the first 2 episodes of this anime is about them trying to terminate Lewis. So that's accurate. Well, let me make myself completely clear. That's accurate. First episode and second episode is about them trying to terminate Lewis because he is the monster on the ship and he is actually in feral form. He has no idea of who he is and anything. He just has, I guess, certain ticks or certain tweaks about him that's still Lewis. But at this scene, it shows that there's nothing of Lewis here remaining because he put his mouth over entire of all the, I guess, the entire helmet of Lewis, like trying to crush the helmet with his mouth. Um, and then Mack basically see, well, I'm about to die. Lewis is about to, or this deformed or this creature version of Lewis is about to crunch my face down and eat me. And this isn't good. So he stabbed him in the side with the broken part of the pole. And that's what happened here. It wasn't at the scene here when he didn't have his helmet on. It was at the scene here. He stabbed him at the side in order to knock him off. Otherwise, he would have got his head eaten or crushed in by this creature. And then the creature fell to the side, and Mack was able to escape while the deformed Lewis fell to the side. And then Mack, I guess he remembers, if I remember clearly, was it Lewis? No, it was Nina. Okay, so that's what happens. Nina, or should I say Patty here, because Patty is the one that has this fingernails, the yellow fingernails right here. Even at the scene right here, Patty came to him again. Still, see, this is why I say this anime kind of goes up and down sometimes. I mean, like, so why are they doing this stupid stuff? It makes no sense. So Patty goes up to him again and show him the butterfly. Finally, still trying to desperately get to see if the deformed Lewis is still human. And then it finally works this time. He managed to remember an aspect of himself through the butterfly itself. Now, this butterfly represented his wife or his lady friend, who he was very interested in. Either he was married to her or he was engaged to marry to her. Whatever it is, but she eventually died in the process. And Lewis's whole mission was on the ship was to see if he could revive her again, keeping her last memories and revive her again on the new planet after it gets colonized. So that was Lewis's motivation for being on the ship and decided to join his crew. He wanted to revive his wife. So him remembering this butterfly triggered something within the monster. Now, once they realized this was triggered within the monster at the end of episode 2, they finally got back to the table again and said, well, I guess we can't kill him now because he spoke and he remembers who he is now. So we can't truly terminate him anymore. So this is no longer about us trying to kill this monster. However, Mack is still saying that, well, even if he remembers that he's Lewis now, he's still feral and he's still dangerous and he will eventually try to kill us. Oscar, on the other hand, Oscar's right here. On the other hand, looks at his old picture of who he used to be when he was on Earth, when he had his wife and his kids with him. He remembers himself, and he remembers having this mustache of who he is when he was on Earth, way back in the day. The last picture that he had, the last picture that he was seen with having before he got onto the ship. What is weird, however, is I don't know when he got this tattoo on his head, but apparently it was sometime after joining the crew or deciding to join the crew in order to recolonize the human species. He had this tattoo on his head, but he still had the mustache, even though he has the tattoo on his head now. So apparently, sometime down the road, he had shaved off his mustache and got a tattoo on his head. And that was something that would come to play later on. So later in the story, we see Oscar going to to find out what was the problem wrong with some sewage system, and because the solar flare had damaged a lot of things on the ship, and the sewage system for water was one of those things. So he went there to check out what was going on with the sewer system. Turns out, while he's doing that, Mack and the others are inside the main control room, and the process of colonizing the planet um, with the beanstalk is still on the way. That's not going to stop because there's a monster on the ship. So they all say, okay, now that we have now that we have that clear, that aspect of the ship that we're trying to control, the monster, we have to continue on with the rest of the mission. So the raw bomb is basically then seen within the monitor and is being processed. Or should I say, they see a monitor of a duplication of an image of something called the raw bomb. And what the raw bomb does is basically is meant to set off like a spark, like an ignition towards certain things to happen on the planet to free, I guess you could see, free rocks or to free compounds or to free any type of glacial activity that's corroding or getting in the way. So carbon dioxide on the planet cannot escape. So the process of the raw bomb is to free up certain pockets within the earth so that carbon dioxide can escape into the air, which is necessary for the development of the plant life that's stored within the womb of the beanstalk. So that was what the raw bomb is going to be used for. However, the raw bomb is going to eventually play a huge factor in the story later on, past episode 3, which we're now into. And once that is stated, Oscar here, basically, who was checking the fuel or checking the different nodes within the sewer system, fall from off whatever ladder or whatever shelf or whatever holding that he was on, and came and fell down to the ground below and was unconscious. When he woke up, he realized his leg was all broken. His right leg was broken. But he realized something else, that it was all bandaged up. Like someone mended and someone bandaged it up. And the person that bandaged it up turns out to be the monster itself, the Deformed Lewis. So it's at this point within the 3rd episode. It's no longer about a monster in a monster story anymore. It's no longer about that type of horror. The horror has shifted from one type of concept of what the anime represented to a different type of concept of what the anime is going to represent moving forward. So you now have like a phase shift. The first 2 episodes was the first shift, and the next 2 episodes will be the next shift. The 3rd and the 4th episode is shifting from what you believe is the horror type of the anime to what will actually be the next horror type of the anime, or to convert what you believe was the first horror, was going to be the actual horror of the anime, into what it is going to be moving forward. So after that, Nina went and harvests Lewis essence while Mack is checking out the raw bomb, as well with Patty. Okay, so moving forward, I'm going down. I have to remember these things. And okay, so Mack then meets Nina, or he managed to make his way out of the sewer system with the help of Deformed Lewis. And then he meets everyone and he says, listen, I have something I have to say. Apparently Lewis helped me out with my damaged leg, but he didn't say it straight out. He was about to say it, but he wants people to wants everyone to negotiate with the Deformed Lewis, because he realized now that the Deformed Lewis is really Lewis. It's just his body has been deformed. So he wants renegotiations in order to not terminate the monster at all. So as he's about to tell Nina, it's like, listen, there's something I got to tell you about Lewis, that it's very important. And then this guy pops up, and this guy that pops up is Lewis, the real Lewis, how Lewis would actually look if he was properly processed through the womb. So Lewis basically say, "What do you have to tell me about myself?" And basically, Oscar looks up at him and say, "Damn, Lewis, like, you look good and everything, but like, I guess the duplication did its thing correct this time." It's like, correct this time. It's like, yeah, like, didn't they keep you up to speed? And like, they gave me somewhat of an idea of what's going on, but what was this thing that you wanted to tell me about it? So basically, Oscar said, "Forget it. I'm just glad that you're here now." So Mack went back on the ship, as well as Lewis, the new Lewis, or the duplication clone Lewis, as well as Patty and Nina. And they continued to tell him more about what was going on. And basically, Lewis basically say, "Well, how is it going with the colonization of the planet?" Patty and Nina says, "Well, we haven't ejected the pod yet in order to go straight down to the planet to terraform the planet yet. What we're about to do it. We're about to do it in like 8 hours from now. So we're just making sure everything is prepped before we launch it." And basically, Louis says that's fine as long as everything is okay. We could go ahead with launching it. Once we fix all the repairs, or I guess you could say once all the repairs from what the radiation damage did with regards to making sure it launched safely and properly onto the planet. I said, yeah, everything about that has been mended. We're just waiting for certain, little things to be overseen before we actually launch it. It's like, that's fine and everything. So now we're at another scene where Oscar is now seen within the room, and he's contemplating to himself, what am I going to do? Now that there's two Lewises, there's this Lewis and then there's the other Lewis. So he receives a call from the Deformed Lewis and tells him, like, listen, negotiations aren't going to go the way you think, because now they've made another version of you. And now that Lewis, the actually other duplication Lewis is here, they obviously are going to terminate you. So in order for you to survive, you need to find a way to hide and stay in stasis, or go to cryosleep, or a way to hide within the ship without them finding you. But eventually they will find you. So you have to go into cryosleep in order to save yourself, because they're going to terminate you. So he said, I could convince them to not kill you if you're not considered a threat towards what we're doing. And the Deformed Lewis agrees with this. So moving on from that, Deformed Lewis is then seen knocked out by a door. And this door leads to the cryopod, which is necessary for the Deformed Lewis to get in and to use and to hide. But this is what is, I should say, this is what everyone sees on the monitor. Turns out that Oscar here and Deformed Lewis made up a plan in order to fool everyone to think that he was getting knocked out, and the Deformed Lewis, the creature, knocked him out to get access to the room. But that's not the case. The case is both of them agreed to access the room, because the access of this room for this extra cryopod, for them to sleep in, can only be opened by more than one person. Why? It's because there are more. Using a cryopod is something that should be a last resort within this anime. Not to mention, there are other things that are very important that's kept in this room, and it only requires authentication of two people in order to get access to it. So one person can't make the decision to go in the room unless there's reason enough for that person to go into the room. And another person has to do it as well, agree with it. in order to go into this room. So it turns out that it's not just a cryopod that was inside of the room. The raw bomb was kept in the room for safekeepings so no one could get access. Because if you're going to use this bomb and this bomb is going to be on your ship, it cannot be something that could be accessed by anyone, one person. It has to be accessed by more than 2 people in order to get access to it. And it's not something that simply can be accessed simply by just 2 people accessing it. It has to have a specific coding to remove it as well. So apparently, the Deformed Lewis knew the coding to remove the raw bomb, even though he had to have one other person to get access to open the door. Now, the enemy does not go about saying a coding was needed to remove the raw bomb from his sheeting and been taken. All that was required was that it needed access for someone to open the door, 2 people to open the door to get access to the raw bomb. Obviously, the enemy is not didn't go into detail of how the raw bomb was removed, because it's not something they could just pull out. It's something that needed to be accessed. So apparently, Lewis or apparently whoever removed the raw bomb knew the specific access coding in order to remove the raw bomb. It's not something that just could be removed. So it's assumed that the Deformed Lewis removed it, and Mack is seen here cold clocking, or should I, punching him. I believe he punched him once or twice, maybe just once. Knocked him on his ass, and was about to punch him a second time, and then Lewis says, "Listen, man, you need to chill out. We know that he actually pretended to be unconscious to help the Deformed Lewis, but he did it because he thought that Lewis was telling the truth. He simply wanted to save his skin from being terminated, and that he knew that because he was his friend from the past, he wouldn't believe that Lewis would lie to him and pretend to him and and cheat him and swindle him out. But apparently that's what happened. So they're all sitting at the table right now and say, okay, apparently the Deformed Lewis has the raw bomb, and if he knows how to use it, he could blow up the ship and everyone in it, which basically would destroy their whole plans to colonize this planet and start a greenhouse effect on the planet after the carbon dioxide have been removed from deep within the planet's core, which the raw bomb was supposed to initialize first. So yeah, that's the problem that's going on now. So the anime has now gone into, it's not about a terror of a monster anymore. It's more about a race against the clock type of situation now. How to stop the monster from using the raw bomb to destroy them, and so they could complete their mission at the same time. That said, you're now going to suspense territory. So it's no longer about simply bioorganic punk style stuff, or about monsters in bioorganic punk style stuff. It's more like a race against the time or a race against the clock situation that's going on now within the anime, which is very good. At this point within the 3rd episode, I stopped thinking a lot about, well, it's not really about horror anymore. It's more about suspense more than anything now. However, the horror aspect was still there, because now it's now a monster carrying a raw bomb. It's no longer about the monster who's killing people on the ship in a paranoia, or fearful or terrifying way. It's now a monster on the ship that has like a mini nuke device that could destroy all of them within a heartbeat. So the terror is no longer about the monster. It's now about a bomb. So it's strange that way that anime is going this direction. But apparently looks can be deceiving. And within, I believe, the end of the 4th episode, 3rd or the 4th episode, yeah, I believe it's the end of the 3rd episode. I could be wrong. The monster, Deformed Lewis, meets himself, the regular Lewis, and says, you know what? The only person I could actually trust right now is myself. So I'm going to go and have a conversation with myself. So he basically is standing on a rafter, hidden behind Lewis, the human Lewis. Basically say, listen, um, I'm going to text you with my human hand. That's still human, while my other monster hand is just going to be holding me on this rafter while I'm high above you. Um, so he texts them and basically say, listen, there's a traitor on the ship. I did not take this raw bomb. And he said, I do not believe you. And Lewis says, I do not believe you. It's like, if you know the reason for why I would want this ship to actually succeed in its colonization of this planet, then you would know that I wouldn't do anything to jeopardize the process of colonization by using the raw bomb to destroy the beanstalk and the ship. So Lewis came to the realization that that makes sense. If this deformed version of me is anything like me, even slightly like me, he would want to do the thing that's most important to him. And what's most important to him is his wife, Kate. Kate cannot come back to life if there's no planet for her to go back to. Even if Kate was to be duplicated within the ship and brought on the ship before time, or whenever she wants, or whenever he wants her to be on ship. The idea is for them to be together on the planet and make a life for themselves. It'll be pointless for Kate to be revived if there's not a planet for her to go to. The whole point of Kate leaving Earth is to have a planet to go to. So he cannot revive Kate until the colonization of the planet happens. At least that's where the anime is saying. Kate agreement was to be revived only when the colonization of the planet happens. But here's the thing, if the entire ship gets destroyed, it won't matter if Kate is revived early or revived after the planet has been colonized, because there won't be any room to revive anyone if it's completely destroyed. So Kate will completely die regardless. That is the logic of what the deformed monster is trying to tell the Lewis. Like, it'd be pointless to do anything that Kate want anyway if she cannot come to life, because there won't be any room to bring anyone to life anyway. So that was the deformed Lewis's, gambit that he's going with. That's his trump card, to use Kate against the new Lewis, to get him to join him. And that's how Lewis and the deformed Lewis end up joining forces. And that's how the anime has now going into a territory of, now we have two situations. I don't believe you, I do believe you, and there's possibly someone who's doing sabotage on the ship. So even in this situation, Lewis still doesn't fully believe him and believe he might actually be fooling him and tricking him. So Deformed Lewis eventually gets upset and said, I'm tired of this shit, I'm going to attack you. You gotta listen to me. They get into a fight. They both fall off the rafters, and this is the point in the story where the Deformed Lewis is captured again. So before I thought, wait, it was Mack that captured him. I was like, no. He was captured and fell off the cliff and hit his head and fell to the ground. I shouldn't say cliff, fell off the beam, fell to the ground, hit his head, passed out, and whoever was there was able to capture him. So Mack and I guess Nina or whoever was there captured him when he was passed out after he got into that conflict with Lewis. So they managed to capture him and seal him and kept him in, in Nina's holding area, locked down. And they asked him, like, where the hell is the raw bomb? When he got conscious enough to respond, he says, I don't know where the raw bomb. So the idea now is to find the raw bomb and to find out where the deformed Lewis hid it. But here is another situation. So we first have the first two episodes of the anime being, it's about a monster trying to kill everyone. That's the horror theme. That's the horror part of the Halloween spooky. the next two episodes it's not just about a horrible monster trying to kill everyone and fool everyone. It's now about a horrible monster with a bomb that's trying to fool everyone, kill everyone. The horror stuff is still going, but it's now about more of a moralist thing: what is right, what is wrong, to kill the monster or not to kill the monster. Comes to the end of the episode 4, or the beginning of the episode 4, it's no longer about that anymore. It's about there possibly being another person on the ship that's the real monster. So the fake monster is now embedded in your head as the real monster at the beginning, and you're thinking we're going in aliens territory. But the anime does it in a way that it makes you believe that's what was happening, but now with the introduction of what is right, what is wrong, what's morally right, what's morally wrong, and colonization of a planet, we now have a culprit that stole the raw bomb. And that culprit is still be the monster, but at the same time, the anime has now given to you an idea in your head that what if it's not the monster? So the anime is no longer about simply a monster killing people scenario. It's more of a race against the clock to save the human species from extinction while trying to stop possibly a culprit who's trying to make the human beings go into extinction. But for what reason would that be? And for why would that happen? See, the story was trying to put it as a monster is on the ship. And there probably is a monster on the ship. But the monster is probably not the obvious one that was shown to you at the beginning. The monster is probably something far deeper. So it goes into now a type of mystery territory. So the anime is no longer simply sci-fi horror or sci-fi paranoia. It now going into sci-fi moralism. It's now going into sci-fi suspect territory. So now mystery is now included into the anime. Could there have been someone sent by either the Earth's organization, planetary organization for colonization, to sabotage this, or a different division of that in order to sabotage what they were trying to do for colonizing the planet for profit or for other means? So it's not simply about monsters anymore. It's more about saboteurism. And that's what's present within this anime now. So what happened, Lewis then teams up with the monster, releases the monster from captivity in Nina's room. And he's like, what the hell's going on? It's like, I said, I'm sorry, Nina, but I have to trap you in this room with everyone else. So Lewis finds a way to secure everyone in a room while at the same time releasing Deformed Lewis. So they both come to this conclusion that that might actually be what's going on. That might actually be what the hell is going on. So while Mack is in the docks searching for the raw bomb, everyone else has been locked in a room by Lewis and Deformed Lewis. So they all realize that that's what's going on. And how Lewis believes this to be true is because, like I said, it's all about Kate, reviving Kate and bringing Kate back. He knows for a fact that if there's any trace of the deformed him inside of, any trace of him inside the deformed version of himself, that it's no longer about himself. It's about doing this for Kate. And he knows that the aspects of him inside the deformed monster wouldn't betray him that way. So the whole thing of, him attacking Deformed Lewis and then getting knocked out, or should I say, Deformed Lewis falling and getting knocked out, him fighting Deformed Lewis, and then Deformed Lewis falling off the beam and knocking his head, that could also have been a pretend, the fight between both of them. But the anime doesn't show it that way. The anime show it like it was an actual fight. However, that turns out to be not the case. He joined up with Lewis, the same way that Oscar was trying to pretend to be helping Lewis before. But this time it's not the same way. Lewis know what he was doing with Deformed Lewis. So the whole thing was set up. Um, so now we have this other scene of someone else looking for the raw bomb, and we have that raw someone else being the Deformed Lewis. So now it's to this point within the fourth episode that it's you could completely get it out your head right now that the monster is the enemy. You know, at least that's what the anime is showing. The monster is not the enemy. The saboteur is the enemy. That the real monster is someone else who has been doing things behind in the shadows. So it's no longer about the enemy that's obviously seen in front of you. It's the enemy hiding in the shadows. You know, the real wolf in sheep's clothing, the real monster that's on the ship. So it's a different type of monster that's in this anime now. Um, so in order to, since now Lewis and Deformed Lewis are watching everyone within this room that they locked them in, Nina basically says they're watching us on cameras. Patty comes up with the idea of using uh, the automatic like showers or the decorations type. I guess you would say that it was type of hologram that shows falling water to give a type of decor to the room. The water isn't real, or maybe the water is real, but it's the decor to the room to show falling water. And that way the falling water could like censor off anyone seeing what you're doing inside or outside of the waterfalls. So we're seeing Nina in the background. You could hear her talking to the other two, but you can't really see her. And the same goes for Mack and Patty. You can't really see them from outside looking in. And the cameras are on the outside trying to look in. So the cameras will only see like shadows of them, but won't be able to see or probably won't be able to hear what they're doing because the water is making noise as well as the water is creating this fuzziness of their image. So even if they move their hands to do anything, it will just show like the outer silhouette doing it, as well as it will knock off the voice of exactly what they're saying because the water is making a lot of noise coming down. That's a clever way of them doing that. So moving forward, we basically see Lewis and Deformed Lewis again within the main command ship, and they're basically saying, okay, so if there's someone trying to sabotage the ship, who would that person be? So the most likely person would be Oscar. It's like, but yes, Oscar is seems like the most likely person because he thought of the whole idea of going into the room to get to the cryopad, for which that room had the raw bomb in it and required two access. I said, but yeah, but Oscar doesn't have code to extract the raw bomb, nor does which is can be accessed from here, from the main central panel. He doesn't have access to certain authorization codes. It's like, and how you know that? Deformed Lewis says, or should I say, Lewis says to Deformed Lewis, how will you know that? I say, well, I was checking the logs and certain things, or should I say, no, Deformed Lewis told regular Lewis, how you know that? And Lewis says, well, I was checking the logs of certain things, and apparently someone had interrupted the seed drones, that the drones that I think there were like hundreds of different drones were sent to the planet to, to, to survey the planet to see if there are anything dangerous habitats or dangerous animals or or anything that's dangerous or things that need to be logged and sent back to the ship that they need to know about the surface of the planet. So these drones were basically terraform, scannings or scan drones of the area, the area of the land. And the land is massive land. It's like an entire damn continent, the area that they're trying to seed. So they needed hundreds of drones anyway. But he basically said that a few of these drones, probably like 4 or 5 of these drones, if I'm not mistaken, or 2 or 3 of these drones, if I'm not mistaken, are offline, and they were given specific commands to do specific things. Um, they weren't supposed to do those things. They were supposed to do exactly what they were programmed to do, the specific commands to do what they were programmed to do. But in truth, they were given specific commands from administration authority. Say, well, that doesn't make sense. Oscar does not have administration authority to overwrite the drones. That has to be done with someone who is in command of the ship in order to do that authorization. And that person can only be me. Lewis was, because he has main authorization in order to, you know, control things with regards to the planet. And everyone else only can, I guess, could move the drones to give them sub commands or standard commands, not main commands, but the sub commands that can only be authorized. It's like buying a computer from a store, and it's your computer, and you have administration rights to set up certain things for your computer, how you want the computer to be done, how you want it to be used, so on and so forth, because it's your computer. But you can make other people use your computer to do certain things, but you have to lock them off from doing other things as well. So basically, that's what it is. Like, how would Oscar, someone who's meant to use the drones to do certain things, have authorization to make the drones do certain commands? He doesn't have permission to make the drone do specific commands. He only has the permission to make the drone do their default settings, just like everyone else in the ship. I said, well, if it's not Oscar, then who could it possibly be, since Oscar doesn't have that permission? So they went over the logs and they checked the video logs from going back for the communication logs of when the last command was meant. And they realized that, oh, this person that did this was Mack. So they realized no one within the ship has command. So they are checking each image of what everyone is saying and what they're saying. And basically they went back to the last recording of the last command that was done during the time of the execution of the command, and it turns out that it was Mack. But Lewis says that makes no sense. It cannot be Mack. It cannot be anyone in the ship. None of them has authorization to override it other than myself. Administration right to do anything other than myself or the company itself. So basically, Deformed Lewis captured Mack and brought him towards regular Lewis and said, well, let me get this straight. And both of them are standing right here over Lewis after he was captured. And they both say, let me get this straight. Or should I say, new Lewis, the clone Lewis says, let me get this straight. You have authorization to overwrite drones, but you're not someone that's supposed to be able to do that. How were you able to overwrite the drones when you don't have command to do it? You were never trained to do this. You were never told to do this. Your job isn't to do this unless you were told specifically by the Earth colonization, planetary colonization division, that you are supposed to do certain things specifically on the ship without no one else knowing. So basically, Mack came to this conclusion. I mean, not Mack came to, Lewis came to this conclusion and said, so basically you were sent here prior before you went into cryosleep with your own secret mission from your own father or from the organization which we were all sent to. So he basically said to Mack, it's like, so the Earth organization does not fully trust us to complete this mission, and you were basically sent to make sure that the mission will not fail without informing us about anything. So if at any time we decide to consider that there might be something on this planet that was hazardous to us, you were supposed to completely ignore this fact and complete the mission regardless if anything was hazardous on the planet or not. And Max says, yes, that's what was going to happen. And Lewis says, basically, are you kidding me? Are you telling me that there's something wrong with this planet and we aren't supposed to be on this planet, and it's not properly, it's not good for us to colonize this planet, even if we terraform it? And based on what Mack is saying, those drones picked up information that stated that there was a harmful threat, life form on the planet, or harmful traces of things that were threatening on the planet, whether it be those molecules or organic compounds or life forms. So you, and then Max says, so you're telling me that there's some, this planet isn't, said it again. It's like you're telling me that this planet is not ready for colonization, even if we're terraforming. That something on the planet, whether it's a compound or a person or or creatures, might threaten the life of the people here who are trying to colonize it, as well as those after it's been terraformed, after plant and life and air is breathable. They might be thinking things on this planet that might threaten the life after we colonize it, after people colonize this planet. And say, well, the Federation, or should I say the Earth organization, Earth Colony Division, however you want to call it, basically said to ignore these things and to start with the colonization of the entire planet. And if those things on the planet gets in the way, they die from the colonization, either with the raw bomb or simply the chemical compounds used to make this planet into something similar to that of Earth. So that's what's going on. So with that said, it now makes sense that there would be a saboteur, someone who wants to make sure that the operation of colonization does not happen. So Max admits that he's not this traitor simply because he was there to make sure that things does go the way the Earth Federation or the Earth Colonization Division wants it to go. So he knows he's not the traitor, but Mack, or should I say Lewis and Deformed Lewis still don't believe him. They believe that he's the saboteur. He's the one that took the raw bomb, and he's making up a bunch of lies, and that he's, the evil person, not the wicked person. Which at the moment it seems like that's what's going on. But then he goes towards Nina and tells Nina, "Listen, can you put me back into the womb?" And Nina says, "Are you serious? By you going back into the womb, you are basically committing suicide. You're murdering yourself because the womb does not discriminate against what's going inside of it. Once you take off your clothes and you go inside the womb, it's going to destroy your cells at a subatomic level. And then whatever is on the outside, you get melted back into, into the machine. Obviously, in order for this to happen, it's not going to go the brutal way that you're assuming. He's not going to watch himself getting eaten alive by the womb or something like that. It's simply going to put him into a stasis where his senses and everything of him is completely numbed out and destroyed. And then he's going to be removed, his body and his organs and everything is going to be disintegrated. The same way is doing the reverse by making everything comes together, everything form together, the body, the lungs, the organs, the bones, the head, the brain, and everything form, and the human beings form together, while at the same time, while those things are forming from the outside to the most minuscule part of completing the person's hair follicles and eyes, no pain is being expressed within the body during these processes. Because if there was pain when a person is being formed as a human being, eyes, lungs, hair, eventually they would be suffering and they would be in extreme pain from the suffering of watching your legs being formed while the rest of your body is already formed. That's terrifying in both sense, whether you're disintegrated or whether you're being formed. So the machine numbs out the pain whatsoever and instills your existence and your feeling of emotion and your knowledge of consciousness after the body has been formed. And the same goes in the reverse. So he wouldn't feel any pain once he gets dissolved back into the womb. So that's what happens with the next scene. The next scene shows him revived again. And I believe this is in episode 5 that he's revived again. And in episode 5, you see him back on the ship. And the same way he was introduced in episode 1 is the same way he's introduced in episode 5. He's shown to be someone that's been revived. And he's on the ship and in the same place that he came to before in episode 1. And he says hello to Nina. He does not know anything. Just the same way when Nina was killed off by Deformed Lewis. When she woke up again in her new body, it's like a fresh start. So he is unaware of everything that happened on the ship leading up from the moment he went into cryosleep at the moment he woke up now. So it's like he has no idea of nothing that happened in the ship prior to him going to cryosleep. So at this moment, investigating, investigating, and investigating. He, I would say investigating. I would say just scanning. Lewis is scanning Mack this whole time. So a day went by, a couple of hours, and the day went by. I believe it's about as good. No, it's not a full day. A couple of hours go by. I would say a bunch of minutes and probably a couple of hours go by because I believe everyone woke up during the same day. So a couple of hours, a couple of minutes, a couple of hours go by, and eventually, Mack is wondering like, shouldn't everybody been revived by now? So it couldn't have been a couple of hours. It could have been a couple of minutes. So Mack is on wondering, well, shouldn't everyone be revived by now? And there's something wrong with the atmosphere as well. He's feeling there's something wrong with the atmosphere. Like the star constellations seem to have not been moving, and that the gravity of the shift is imbalanced. And so Nina is saying like you're looking too deep into it. It's like, really, am I looking too deep into it? I don't think I'm looking too deep into it. And Nina's saying, well, maybe you are. It's like, okay, that's fine if you want to believe it, but I believe you're hiding something from me, Nina. So he looked at her in this inquisitive way, and he's wondering what Nina is hiding. And Nina is not doing a good job of hiding it. So that said, he eventually realizes something is not right with the ship. And then Lewis says, well, the test has been complete. Nina, you don't have to worry about everything. He's not the culprit. And Mack is basically saying, what the hell is going on? He has no idea. It's like basically waking up to a type of waking up from a dream and realize it's not a dream, it's reality. So Lewis brought him back into the ship, main command of the ship, and basically told him exactly what's going on since he last was here. And even though he doesn't remember anything, because why would he? Because every backup of these people's minds are simply backup of their original selves. There's not like a memory that stores the backup of everything they do in the ship. The only backup that the ship keeps is the backup of who they were prior to cryosleep. There isn't like a system that could back up their memories previously from the last thing they did on the ship. The backup only happens after they go into cryosleep, or was recorded for them going into cryosleep. So he's told all this now, and he's shown a video of Patty and Oscar locked in the room with Nina, and Nina is sent back into the room, and basically Lewis told him, Mack, it's like, listen, I know you're not the person who's the culprit anymore, the person or the saboteur, the person that wants to kill us. You're not the killer. But we still have to find out which of these three guys are. Because someone stole that raw bomb, and someone started to sabotage this whole operation. And you basically told me that you were sent by the Earth to make sure that the colonization of the planet does happen, because you believe that someone might try to stop it. So once he realized that someone might try to stop it, he, both Lewis and Mack and Deformed Lewis are now trying to find out who that person is, to stop them from not destroying the ship or stopping the colonization. So the sixth, I think the end of the fifth episode, going into the sixth episode, goes with now it's no longer a story about a monster. It's no longer a story about just a race against time. It's no longer a story simply about finding out who the culprit is, and it's no longer a moralist story. It's more like a story of someone is, you know, someone is, well, I guess you could say it's still a mystery story and who the culprit is. But it feels more like a story that someone is now the new monster. That's how it feels like. Because before you say, okay, it's sabotage, someone's trying to stop the operation and steal a raw bomb. But it doesn't feel after Mack has been revived, and after Mack realizes he's not the killer, and after Mack says he was sent to make sure that certain hazardous things on the planet were ignored by the Earth Federation, and that those things might actually be a threat, and to ignore those threats, it could be that someone else was sent by Earth to make sure if the colonization fully goes on their operation, someone besides Mack that Mack doesn't know about, or that colonization stops. So someone here is willing to do anything in order to make sure all these people end up dead and the colonization doesn't happen, or make sure all these people succeed, but will probably kill everyone in order to make sure the operations succeed. So there is a monster on this ship, but this monster is willing to kill everyone in the process. But this monster is not what's presented at the beginning of the first two episodes. This monster is presented later within the fourth and the fifth episode. That's when you start to realize that this monster is someone else. It's a different type of monster. You were getting breadcrumbs leading to it, but then you start to realize that this monster might actually be someone else. So during the process, they're playing cards. Nina's playing cards. Oscar's playing cards, and they're all in the room playing cards. And then all of a sudden, Nina whips out a knife and then points it towards Oscar. And then Deformed Lewis sees this on the monitor and runs in there to um, trying to stop them. While at the same time, Mack is saying, "You know what? Um, I might have an idea who I think it might be, but I don't have time for that right now. We have to find a raw bomb before this person decides to blow up the ship." So he left um, Lewis and Deformed Lewis to actually quell the little aggression that's going on in the room, while Mack will continue to do his search for the raw bomb. During that time the within the room that they're detained in, um, Nina, Patty, and Oscar put on, I should say more like Nina and Patty, not Nina and Patty, Nina and Oscar put on this little show because Nina whipped out that knife to point at Oscar was all a little game for Lewis to see. To think that Nina is suspecting Oscar as the person that stole the raw bomb. So they were accusing each other back and forth, but it was all a little game, a little trick, for a way for all three of them to escape the room, because they believe that the person who was actually the guilty party, the actual person that stole the raw bomb, is still the Deformed Lewis. They don't 100% know they're sure, but they are unaware that they're pretty sure that they are not, or at least the anime is trying to show that they are not, when they could fully well still be. So at this point, I came up with a conclusion that there are only three people this person, since Mack has been absolved. So when I came up with the idea of who the person might actually be is when I realized, well, okay, so Mack is completely absolved of any type of crime. And I know it's not Deformed Lewis, and I know it's not Lewis. So that leaves only three people that it could possibly be: Oscar, Nina, and Patty. But like I have always said, when it comes to anything that mystery or crime, you either have one killer or you have two. You should never have three killers. And in this case, I believe the same applies. Either it's one person that's the culprit or two people that are the culprit who are the killers. And I can call them killers, not just saboteurs, because they're willing to use that bomb to kill everyone. So they are killers. And if it's to stop colonization, then they're not just killers, they're extremists as well. And they've been known to be extremist types who are willing to either save life or willing to take life in order for their deeds to happen. So my first my first idea of who this person might be, if they're actually an extremist or an killer extremist at that, is the person could be Oscar. Because characterization going forward, each development characters proceed from, I guess you could say, the second episode when you start to see character development, and into the third, into the fourth episode where you start to see character development of all these people, especially from Oscar and Nina here. They have a lot of character development, and some from Mack as well with regards to his family lineage. So they have the most characterization than Lewis. I mean, Lewis has the thing that has to do with his wife, but Oscar has more motivations, I believe, than Lewis does. But the anime basically tells you that's not true. Um, Lewis has more motivation than Oscar does, and Lewis himself say, "Are we real? Are we even real? Duplicating ourselves like this, backing up our memories like this. Are we even people? Is my family even real? Are we really even human?" And then Patty told him, like, does it really matter if we're really human or not? Our job is simply to do our job. So now that it's come down to three people. The people who I believe that are most suspicious, as based on how they spoke, based on what they said, based on their behaviors, based on who they are, based on what they believe. I believe that those culprits are either Oscar and Patty, because you don't have a lot of information with regards to Patty's backstory. In fact, you hardly have anything with regards to Patty's backstory other than she's a humanitarian type. She doesn't want to kill people if she doesn't have to. So you could say that's what she have. But you've shown nothing with regards to our family, our backstory, or any relationship with regards to anyone. You're seeing kind of something with regards to Oscar's backstory, his wife and his kids, but he basically stated what is real and what isn't, who is real and what's not. Do I even have a wife or kids? He had stated this early on in the second episode as well. However, Nina, I would suspect, would be, you would think, based on her appearance and based on her behavior, and they're showing her as the first person, that she would be the actual culprit. Um, it kind of contradicts her existence when she stated that I also am a moralist in certain sense, and I also believe in what's right and what's wrong. And you sort of see a backstory to her character, and her character is showing her in the teddy bear, and she want to state that it's human of her to consider herself human. So when Oscar said what is real and what isn't, Nina basically in a scene prior to that says, "Well, I am human. I know I am human because if I could feel, if I have emotions, and if I have faults, and I have things wrong, it's like it doesn't matter how many duplication bodies they made. Like as long as my emotions, my feelings are that of human, and I could make choices based on that, you know, I cannot see myself as simply a byproduct to do something." So in a certain sense, she contradicts both Oscar and both Patty in that sense, because Patty agrees that I believe in life and things that should flourish and stuff, but I don't believe it matters that I am, I have a self. That it doesn't matter that self is important, but it matters that life is important. Whereas Oscar says um, kind of the same thing. It doesn't matter really. I mean, he does kind of say the same thing, but at the same time he doesn't. It's like, if I do have a self, do I really have a self or do I not have a self? So that's what the idea of the duplication thing comes into play. That's why I'm suspecting both Oscar and Patty as the main suspects with regards to the anime when I got to this point after Matt got resolved. So Nina is the least likely to be the person that I thought at the halfway point in the story. And my conclusion was it's either Oscar or Patty, or it's both of them. So as after they escaped the room, after the little pretend fight happened between between Nina and Oscar, and they knocked out Deformed Lewis, because Lewis came in there to stop the fight, but then and get the knife out of Nina's hand. Both Nina and Oscar jumped Deformed Lewis, knocked him out, and escaped the room. And then Patty asked him, when did he come up with this? And they basically both said, we came up with this when we wrote it on the cards, playing cards. We tried to get you in, but you refused to join in for our little ruse. And so the anime is trying to set up both Nina and Oscar as the culprit by putting them, seeing they're trying to escape the room and stop whatever Lewis is trying to do. But I wasn't fooled by that at all. That seemed too convenient. Until the next scene where Patty says, I guess you could say Patty's starting to be suspicious of both of them. And she says they went to the main room, the main control room, after Lewis and the others was trying to find them and everything. But they managed to escape and got to the control room. And then Patty says, well, I see that Mack was messing with one of the drones and he was able to overwrite the drones. I wonder how he was able to do something like that. And so, both Nina and Oscar look at her suspiciously, suspiciously as if she's found out something about them and that she found out that they're actually, probably the people that sabotage the ship or wants to stop the colonization. At least that's what it seems like when it was presented within the anime. But there's something else that popped up with regards to that. I say, well, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Something doesn't make sense here. How would Patty know that Oscar changed up codes for certain things, for certain drones to do certain individual things? With regards to that, I mean, why would she go directly to check that more than anything? Why does she care about colonization of the planet at this moment? Shouldn't they be worrying about locking down the air so that they're not found out by others? And say, well, Patty's being suspicious as well now. So even though my mind is totally on Oscar being the culprit, now Patty's being suspect. So now the line sight is dragged towards Patty. So if it's towards Patty, then Patty's the killer. But if it's towards Oscar, then Patty has just discovered that Oscar was up to no good. But it's showing like both of them are suspecting Patty. So the anime is doing this good thing about going back and forth to try to fool you. But it didn't fool me to a certain sense. I mean, it's fooling me, but it doesn't completely fool me because my mind is still on Patty and Oscar being the culprits. So after episode 4 is done and we got into episode 5, this whole thing about finding out who the culprit is happened in episode 5 towards the end of episode 5. And them having the conversation in this room is within episode 5. I guess Max says, you know what, I'm tired of this BS. I can't find a raw bomb, and I believe that one of those three is the suspect. So we have to find out a way to get it out of them. If we could beat it out of them, we have to beat it out of them. But we're not going to let any of them destroy the ship. It's no longer about, being nice anymore. And Lewis says, come on, dude, we can't go that route. But before any of that happened, surprise, surprise, the person that I suspected to be the actual killer, which is Oscar, turned out to not be the killer. Turned out that my suspect, like one of my suspects was right. So the three people I had as suspects was Nina, Oscar, and Patty. But I couldn't lock down who the killer was. So I automatically suspected it was Oscar. But lo and behold, it wasn't Oscar. It wasn't Nina. It was actually Patty. And what was weird about this is that Patty duplicated herself. But here's the thing. You cannot duplicate yourself prior to the ship. You can only duplicate yourself after the ship is operational, come back online, air comes into the ship, oxygen, and then people could start awaken other people, or the womb can start to awaken everyone automatically. At least that's how the ship was set to be. So apparently, it was later stated by Patty as the anime was going through every episode And Patty was saying this. It's like, listen, um, let me show you something. I got all these eyes here. You know how I got all these eyes? Um, it's because who eyes are those? Those aren't what I think they are. It's like, yep, these are what you think they are. They're all your eyes. You don't want to know how I got them? It's like, it's simple. I got them because I took them and I duplicate them prior to coming onto the ship, or prior to me going into stasis, or should I say, not prior to me going into stasis or cryostasis, after I went to cryostasis, and I was given a command to create prior to me going into cryosleep, which was, I'm still in cryosleep right now, but prior to me going into cryosleep, I was given a command by my organization to make another womb within the ship, a miniature one, a small one that could do and create a human being equal to that of the mass produced one, which was more viable and get things done more accurately with little, with little line of defect. Whereas the one that I was given was able to create life at a more geometric rate, at a faster rate, with 1% of default within it that might actually scar the tissue or the compounds of the body, which means the body is not going to be able to live too long as the mission is done. So, and during that process, once that body has been created, um, everyone would be in, everyone who was, I guess you could say, the moment the ship goes into um, cryosleep mode, all the air sucked out and everything. So no one could sleep or move around in the ship while everyone's passed out, which means there were no oxygen in the ship. It's like, how were you able to survive if you were running around in the ship while everyone was still wasn't being processed yet? There is no oxygen, no life in the ship. Only the machine in the ship was alive. No organic compound could have lived in the ship during that process. Say, well, that's true, but the moment the ship came alive and started to fuel oxygen in, the time period for which it started its first duplication of body, which means Nina. Nina was the first person to be turned, which she was supposed to be the first person to be turned. The time period for when it was developing Nina, the one that was already in development and already been created was Patty. So Patty had already, should I say, prior to the ship, prior to everyone going to cryo, Patty was already growing something within the ship. So basically, Patty was basically walking around on the ship before the ship even took off, before the ship even left Earth, or before the ship even decided everyone should go into cryo sleep, um, on a different, I guess, a different cryopad. I'm not exactly sure what the anime is basically saying. It basically, but from what I've got, with regards to the anime, there was a ship or a docking station, a type of docking station, and at the docking station, everyone, all the people who are colonists, are going to be coming to the planet 100 years later. So the cryo ship, or the cryo ship location, the main docking station, cryo ship, the main ship, not this small ship, is where the originals of each of these people are. Nina, Oscar, Mack, Lewis, Patty, they're all on that ship, still on that ship. That when, before this fish looking ship, the smaller ship, left that station, Patty already grew her own personal womb, already was a personal womb was created in a separate compartment within that ship that left by her organization, and she was sent in as the agent to make sure to watch over it to see that it continued its processing of a duplication of her. And that's what happened. She created a duplication of herself prior to the ship leaving that station, and that process of her creation was being made when that ship was still being left, or herself, or should I say herself, was still inside of the womb while the ship was leaving that station. So by the time the ship came awake, the main like fish ship came awake and started to fuel oxygen into the entire compartment, that patty that was inside of that pot, inside of that womb, was the first to wake up and was able to leave it, run around the ship like it shows her. She was running around the ship while everyone's still awake, and then she was able to process and duplicate herself prior to Nina being duplicated. So in all truth, Nina was never the first person to wake up. She wouldn't know. She wouldn't have known. She would just thought, okay, I'm the first person to wake up. At least that's what Patty was trying to fool everyone into believing. And the anime itself was trying to fool everyone into believing that Nina was the first person to wake up. But the whole time, within the very first scene of the anime, the very first scene of this anime showing the feather, that was the feather that of the pillow that the duplicate Nina or the duplicated Patty was sleeping on within that smaller womb. She was sleeping on a pillow within a smaller womb looking location. And then when Nina woke up out of her processing and checked her pulse and checked all these things. During this whole time, on the ship, uh, Patty, both Patties were awake, and or should I say, not both Patties were awake before Nina even went to check her blood and to check her processing and to see how her heart is and how everything is and how the processing of the next person would be before even any of that happened, before the discovery that there was a second Nina or there was a second Patty, before any of these things came into mind. Patty herself was already on the ship, already duplicating herself, already did everything, and then thereafter, what Patty basically says, um, I basically terminated myself right before Nina was resurrected. Basically, she's saying she basically killed herself, or killed one of the duplicates of herself. And the other one, the other self of her, hid within the ducts somewhere on the ship, the whole time waiting for her to be revived again. The second of her to be revived again. Because if two of the patties were to hide within the ducts, there won't be two patties seen here towards the end of the 6th episode. There would be three patties. So the anime didn't want to go in the route of having three different people or three enemies. Like I said, two company, three is crowd. So what happened is one of them committed suicide, went back into the womb, just the same way Mack did in order to prove his innocence, and then waited for another patty to be processed again. And once that second patty was processed again, the patty was hiding in the ducts the whole time, waiting, told her about what happened on the ship, and then they went about to, did the whole little thing to pretend that nothing was going on, back and forth, until we got up to this point where she revealed that she is the actually culprit. So it's very complicated in that sense, but that's the gist of what's going on. Now, what happened thereafter is that Patty took out a knife and was going to stab Nina because Nina wanted to stop her, but then Oscar jumped in the way to try to save Nina because Oscar was hiding. I mean, not Oscar. Lewis was hiding behind a rafter, overheard the conversation of Patty blabbing off her whole evil plan um, to save what's happening on the planet. Apparently, there are life forms on the planet that they want to save and that believe that terraforming system will terminate that life. So by sabotaging the ship and killing everyone on the ship, apparently Patty has no problem with murdering people in order to save other life, but apparently she has a problem with killing other life forms on the planet in order to save them. So the idea of genocide was the first thing she says. What does the Earth have right to commit genocide of another species on the planet? And then from Nina's point of view, it's like, well, you're nuts because the human species won't survive if it doesn't find another planet to go to. So in some sense, that you're committing, genocide yourself. In Patty's eyes, be like human beings are chaotic anyway, so maybe they shouldn't survive. So you have two type of genocidal people that are being presented here. One who willing to kill their own, and other who willing to save others by not killing their own, but killing other things in order to do so. So that's the idea of moralists coming back into play from what the first and second episode was trying to refer to. So it's more than just a horror anime. It's more like a sci-fi mystery slash moralist slash horror type anime. And the most horrible thing within the anime wasn't the monster; it was the machine, duplication of life, um, how it can make people, if the soul isn't present, if a sense of morality isn't present, that the person or the persons being duplicated see themselves as simply a byproduct. And that's what Patty was supposed to represent. I am simply a process of things. And without feelings and emotions, a person is willing to do horrible things if they don't have a consciousness. At least that's what the anime is trying to say. But on the side of Patty, it depends on who you are. You either believe in the yin and the yang, balance is required for everything, and no one's really important more than other, or you believe in self is more important. So there's two versus competition right here. So it's a very interesting anime. So we have now Lewis on the table being stabbed in the back, and Nina's trying to save him, and Patty is now going off with Oscar in order to secure the raw bomb. Because Oscar, once again, I said it before, was someone who's questioning his self, whether he's really alive, what is not, what's important, and what isn't. In Oscar's mind, what's most important is the survival of another species on the planet. But he doesn't seem to concern too much with the survival of his own species, which is kind of contradicts his idea of, his wife and his kids' um, survival, or him bringing back his wife and his kids, or a place for his wife and his kids to grow up in. He was more concerned with them seeing him as a great man or saving a species rather than to save his own species. So, in a certain sense, that's where Oscar falls into the territory. He's an indecisive person, and it was kind of presented at the beginning. So, it's not like the anime did not tell you the type of person he was. That's why he was more in my mind as the person who was the killer, because he was never for the left or for the right. He was right in between, indecisive. Um, and I guess you could say that was kind of like my own falling out, because typically a person who's kind of self-centered, self-aware, and selfish would be someone to do something like that. But there's also the reverse that's presented as well. There's also people who are willing to be too into what they're doing on one side in order to accomplish something, and that could be extremists that are totally narrow-minded to a fault, that they're not imbalanced like Oscar is, that they're willing to do horrible things. So that's what Nina tells to Patty, and Patty was having this conversation like, Nina, you can't tell me anything. And then Nina says, well, Nina kicked her in the face and said, you know what, I envy you for not being able to, to think that you have a soul and you could be so, sure of yourself. Um, but that really just pissed off Patty. Basically, Nina's way of looking down on Patty and say, you're really stupid to not think of yourself as just as more than just a thing. But Patty gets pissed off on that and tries to kill Nina in the process. During this whole time, Lewis is passing out on the table and is about to die. And it's at this scene that he sees Kate in his dreams, and I could basically confirm that Lewis is dead at this point from the womb. So they are unable to save Lewis because um, everyone is super busy in trying to find one, the raw bomb, which is about to go off soon, two, the terraforming process has gone on the way on the planet. So now the terraforming process has gone on the way on the planet, and now everyone is going down to find out, well, maybe the raw bomb is on the device here. And Deformed Lewis gets in contact with Patty and says, well, now that I know that you set me up and everything, I'm going to stop you. And Patty says, well, you can't stop me because, everything is going the way I want to, so on and so forth. However, she didn't realize that Mack was standing right behind her, cold clocked her from the back, and then tied her up here. And as you can see on Patty's face, she has a damaged face. That's because the process of what made her into a person, what created her into a human being, or the development process wasn't the same as their development process from the womb. The womb that she came out of mass produced her, or not mass produced, but developed her at a geometric rate that it caused a side effect is that she doesn't have long to live. So, but that's all she really needs. That's why her face is starting to break down and everything, not just her flesh. So she's starting to go deformed, which is kind of funny because um, it's kind of basically it's like a way of the anime telling you like you're so willing to do things at such a fast rate. You're not willing to wait and think about certain things by you jumping the gun. And look what it's doing to you. You're so right about yourself. You're starting to look like the monster for which your actions are doing. So that's a nice little way of the anime using those things to represent the action that Patty is trying to do. A symbolism of her monstrous behavior into her actions of the womb and everything, doing things at a fast rate in order to get fast results. And then the other Patty crashed the ship into the planet in order to save the other Patty who was tied up. During that process, Nina and the others basically are still looking for the raw bomb again. And then it dawned on them. I don't know why it took them so long for it to dawn on them. It's like, well, the only place the raw bomb could be, if it's not on the planet, is one other place. And that's within either the womb or within the beanstalk. It's like, but if it's within the room, it'd be dissolved. So it has to be with somewhere within the beanstalk compartment. And then they found it within the beanstalk. And the raw bomb only have a couple of minutes to go before it explodes. So they don't have much time anyway. So they quickly took the raw bomb, escaped onto, took the raw bomb out of the ship because the raw bomb was within the beanstalk on the ship. Took the raw bomb out of the ship, managed to get it out of the ship. But of course, of course, Patty um, confront them again in order to stop them because she realized that they found the raw bomb. And Mack was the only person that says, okay, deform Lewis, get the hell out of here, take the raw bomb and get it away from the ship. And I'll take care of these two jokers here, these two Patties, and stop them. He can't stop them because both Patties are trained martial artists. And Max says, well, that makes no sense. Like, how are you so good at fighting? It's like, are you kidding me? Are you seriously telling me that if someone was to sabotage this planet and to make sure it goes according to plan, you really think that they wouldn't have a contingency plan and that everything was considered, that they would have to get in combat with other people, that the idea that they would need to use their brains to solve a problem would be considered, that they would have to find out a way to get around certain things, that combat was something that was set within their anatomy, within their selves, prior to them being on the ship. So it's not that they were just educated to be, botanist, or I'm not sure if she's the botanist. I believe she might have been uh, another biologist, another type of biologist. But it never said what she does. But I don't think she's the botanist. Or maybe she's the botanist. And someone else. Well, I don't know. It never said what her specific duties were on the ship. It only said that she was part of the ship in order to make sure the colonization happened. But she was educated in something to help with the ship do the colonization. But that wasn't only her skill set. martial arts, and other assassination techniques was also part of her skill set. However, Lewis Mack knowing this now found out that he was outnumbered and he couldn't beat them. So Deformed Lewis came in to help and, you know, attack one of them. So now Mack is just fighting one and Deformed Lewis is fighting other. Now, what happens here in this little image right here is Deformed Lewis tackles the other Patty and they slam into the side of one of the corridors or one of the outer areas on the cliff side of one of the outer areas of where the terraforming plant was. And what he did is after Patty started to choke him out, he took one of his hands and took her harness device that was on the back of her suit and locked it into like a floating ship or floating section. I guess you could say what he did is he pulled on like this little parachute like it's either a parachute that was attached to one of the poles at the side of the ship here, or it was a parachute that was attached to her back that was inside of her suit. I don't believe it was inside of her suit. I believe it was something that was attached to the ship right here. They basically put the raw bomb inside of that little like parachute that was on the top section here. And when Patty went to try to get it, I believe what he did is he attached her to the pole that it was hooked on here, and it dragged her away. And the other Patty, seeing this, went to try and rescue her, to jump onto her, to pull it off of her. But by the time that she was able to try to do that, she was already lifted into the air, way into the air by the parachute itself. So it pulled her, it pulled both Patties, to be honest with you, as well as the raw bomb, away from where the terraforming system was, and also away from where the ship was, where the beanstalk was. So both Patties basically blowed up in a spectacular form, as well as the raw bomb, away from the terraforming device and away from the ship itself that contained the beanstalk. But the blast affected, damaged everything within the area. So even if the blast went off like a mini nuke, whatever's on the outside got destroyed. So what happened here, Deformed Lewis jumped into the center area of where the terraforming machine was. I'm very surprised that he didn't get vaporized by a machine doing its duties, which means the machine doing its duties by terraforming the earth, whatever the laser wasn't something that was truly like destructive or harmful to the human body. Otherwise, he would be shredded. However, both Patties got blown up in this huge blast of flashlight, or this huge, you know, flare light came from both of them. They got destroyed in an instant, and then Mack, on the other hand, however, running out of air, realized he wouldn't be able to escape anywhere, even if he didn't resist the blast, because the outside atmosphere hasn't been processed for oxygen yet on the planet. Died in a spectacular form. I wouldn't say spectacular. I just say he died from, you know, basically explosion from the bomb, or the aftermath of the explosion of the bomb way in the air. So the effects of the bomb in the air destroyed him because it was closer to him. And what it is, oh yeah, Oscar on the other hand, a blast from an effect of Oscar pushing him away from the ship and away from the terraforming device. So he was on the outside. It pushed him away from the ship and away from the terraforming device. He was safe from the explosion. However, the damage cracked his helmet, and he eventually suffocated to death on the outside. It's kind of a fitting ending for him, because I would say fitting because he was always indecisive. He never picked a side. So his punishment was to die not knowing whether he was really a hero or whether he was a criminal. However, in the future, whatever was logged into the ship will log him the deeds that happened in the ship. So I believe whoever comes 100 years after and check the logs of the ship will realize the person who was trying to do the sabotage and those who supported the person who was trying to do the sabotage by log recordings of what's going on in the ship. So no matter how you see it, it doesn't look good for Oscar in the future. He's not going to get those merit and those recognitions that he wants. Um, so the only person that survived at the end is Nina. Surprise, surprise. Uh, I thought she was actually going to die, to be honest with you. But this is a nice little reverse way of doing the Ripley thing. You don't centerfold her within the entire anime. You don't put her as the most important person. You put her as not even the second most important person. You put her as the third most important person. And then you slowly build her up into the most important person leading towards the end. Kind of the same way they did with Ripley. She wasn't the most important person in the first Aliens movie. She was kind of the third most important person in that movie. The most important person was the leader of the ship. And the second most important person was that you assume was going to survive would be, one of the other crew members. That Ripley was eventually going to die. But you kind of had the sense that Ripley wasn't going to die, that she wasn't the third most important person, that she was second most important person. So you kind of get an idea that even no matter how you cut it, if Ripley wasn't the most important person of that Alien franchise, she would eventually be the second to last person to die before that main person survived, which was the captain of that ship. So it turns out to be that that's not the case. The captain of the ship went down again, and every all the crew members went down again, and the Ripley survived. That's why I say this is a nice little reverse Ripley, or not reverse Ripley, alternate universe version of a Ripley done in a more scientific way rather than a cyberpunk way, or a future punk way. So this is a nice little biopunk anime. So moving on from that, after she put I guess you could say the burial coffins of her friends, she can't create coffins, so she just took metal and then scribbled their names onto each one of these metals and buried them under here. These are all the crew members, and I'm surprised that she even decided to put a burial part for Patty, but apparently she kind of, I guess in some sense or some moral sense, because I guess this is Mack's one, and then the names of each of these, I don't know exactly which one is Patty, but um, I guess in certain sense she kind of understands what was Patty's motivations, why she had to do what she had to do. So this was a pretty long anime, but I try to make it as simple as I possibly can. And the last couple of scenes in this anime is the greenhouse effect of the seeds from the beanstalk doing their work um, by computer generated commands, and it went all about the planet, all over the colony, and or the entire plateau, or the entire, however large the landmass is, for thousands and thousands of miles, and spread all across that area, and communicate back and forth with each other, because it's not a simple beanstalk project where they all do things separately. Um, they're all under certain commands that feed back to the main core information. So it's like a huge processing of mass-produced livestock, or in this case, mass-produced greenhouse. So all that is going back to the center of terraforming device of the beanstalk. So that's what's happening. And then we see later on in the anime, a couple of years have passed, and I wouldn't say couple, more like a good decade or so has passed, and Nina has, her blue hair is now white hair, and she's become, but the blue hair was never really her hair to begin with. The blue hair was simply a representation of the color choice that she liked, or maybe her hair was slash blue in style, or light blue. Who knows? But we see now she has the streak of white in her hair, and she's aged, and she's at a certain age now, which means she's getting really old, and now she's starting to have health problems. And then flash forward even more, probably a decade, even more, maybe even 2 decades more. She's a really old person. So I'm thinking, when Nina was originally on the ship, she was either in her late 20s or early 30s, and then a decade later, she ended up being in her late 40s, which you would see here, late 40s or early 50s. And then here, probably like 2 decades after that, she is in her late 70s or late 80s. So either she's in her 80s or she is in her 90s here. I believe it might be in her late 80s here. Um, so yeah, that's well, I don't know her age, but she's old as hell. That's what I'm trying to say. Um, and then afterwards, she dies, and she becomes part of the earth, so on and so forth. And then the machine of the womb turns on 100 years later, the year that the colonization was supposed to happen, and people were supposed to be processed and brought back to life. Um, anyway, and so Nina was processed and comes to life. And Nina wakes up and she's brought back to life and she's here. And after she's brought back to life, after she's here and she sees this greenhouse, we've come to a part in the future that's so distant that the beanstalk here has been completely covered with mesh and moss and a lot of you know uh, the roots from the tree that grow all over it. And yeah, that's pretty much the end of the anime. And there's a nice little surprise after this as well, because those colonists eventually show up 100 years after. They're not being processed. The process only happens for those people who are duplicated in order to see things true. And the reason why Kate was processed is because Kate actually died in an accident more than 100 years ago, or in an accident when Lewis was with her in real life, and Lewis decided to go into cryo sleep back on Earth 100 years ago, simply so that he could bring her the duplicate version of her and put her memories in the duplicate version of her body. The real Nina's body is dead. However, the real Lewis's body isn't dead. The real Patty's body isn't dead. The real Nina's body isn't dead. They're all in cryo sleep. So they're all going to be here at some point. Even though Kate is never going to be here, it's always going to be a duplication Kate. Which is kind of weird in a sense, not because it's a duplication Kate. It's weird that all these people died and all these situations happened and all these, everything that was required in order to complete this mission was chaotic at the same time, sometimes disturbing. And they won't know any of this other than when they start to read the logs of the ship, of what happened on the ship. But they wouldn't have experienced any of this. They won't know any of this. Nina won't know what Nina did on the ship. Patty won't know what Patty did on the ship. All Patty would know is that she was hired by an organization to do certain thing on the ship prior to her doing it. So when she wakes up, she's going to be incriminated. She's going to put in jail. She's probably going to be executed. But she kind of had an idea that that was happening anyway, because she basically said it when she was on the ship after she got caught. Or no one caught her. She just voiced, here I am, I'm the actual person, you couldn't catch me. You know, she basically told everyone, listen, I already know what's going to happen. My real self is going to be prosecuted and probably terminated and executed for what she has done here, for the deeds that she was trying to do. And am I going to be go out as a martyr or as a genocidal maniac? So how would history remember me? So she was banking on the fact that she was going to either she succeed and she becomes a martyr, or she fails and she becomes considered a genocidal lunatic. Anyway, she already knew what the risk was, and she already know that what side she was going to pick. And as long as her mind was set straight on what mattered most to her and what mattered most to her extremist organization, she was okay and cool with it. So apparently, I believe there's going to be another anime of this show. And it's going to be about what happens 100 years later, and the punishment fits the crime. And it's no longer going to be about Patty or, about the people on the ship, but it is going to probably be about that organization that sent Patty to sabotage this planet. and if there are any dangerous life forms that were found on this planet, that basically Mack did say those dangerous life forms that are on the planet are going to come into play later on, because the Earth Federation basically told Mack to ignore these things so that they don't go back. So even though I have a feeling that Patty knew about those dangerous things as well. Even though she basically said there was only one intelligent life that was on the planet that was found. I believe even she might have been inaccurate, that there might be more than one. And if this anime, or should I say this show, wants to go into another experimentation of this world, it could basically go in that direction and say, well, if we want to increase the stakes, we could basically say that there was more than one intelligent life form on this planet, or the intelligent life form on this planet was not completely true, that they weren't completely docile at all. They were dangerous, and the Earth, I guess the Earth colonization organization knew about this, but the anime never said this. So it could go in that direction if it want to. But that was basically exception, and I gave this anime an 8.4. It was very good. Now, leaving from that, because I went into a long conversation, this might actually turn out to be like a 3-hour video, but I have to do it because that was an entire, that was an entire series. So the next one is my favorite and probably the best one for October of 2022, and that's Chainsaw Man. Yes, I could have dumbed down the last one and spoke about things less, but you're talking about going over every single episode of this anime um, without, like, by numbing it down, without going too much into detail, and that's an entire hour per each episode. So I basically did a good job with 2 hours and 30 minutes to describe an hour for like 7 or 8 episodes. So that's that. So now we're into Chainsaw Man, and Chainsaw Man starts out with a boy um, waking up in a room. And this anime, before I even state, this anime is not like Exception. This anime is bloody. This anime has a lot of guts. This anime is not completely complete like Exception is. It's still an ongoing anime, and this anime is basically considered a more violent approach to things than what Exception did. It's basically low tier on the scare and horror factor, but it's very high tier on the blood and guts factor with some mild horror elements in the anime. So for October, I chose this one as the main one with regards to being close towards, you know, gore and violence that's required for a nice little Halloween treat under the Halloween guise of scare and spook factor. So Chainsaw Man is the one that I go to first because it has a deeper story. It has a longer lineage. It'll probably be a longer franchise that exists beyond that of Exception, and it has a promising future. However, on the factor of scares, I would say it's in the 6 range. So I would give it a 6 for this. But in the factor of it actually being an awesome anime, I would say it's an 8. It's slightly below that of Exception, even though I consider it to be more interesting than Exception in certain cases. But the story is not better than Exception. That's why it's below Exception. So this is Chainsaw Man. The boy wakes up in a room. He's right next to a type of pet type creature, and this creature has like a chainsaw in its head and it looks like a dog. And when he wakes up in this room, he walks out of his room and he's walking through a forest-like area. And this room, or this hut, however you want to call it, um, is inside of a forest. So he's living there for the moment. He walks onto the street, walks into, starts talking certain things about, I have 38 million left to go. He sold one of his livers. He sold one of his testicles. He sold an organ or something or two, and he still has 38 million to pay off. Moving, and the name of this kid is called Denji, and the name of his little pet here is called Pochita or Pochina, something like that. And what happened is he came across he got this idea after he first met Pochina when he was young, that in order for him to pay off his debt, he would do devil hunting work. And since devil hunting is kind of something that exists in this anime, because devils exist in this anime, for some reason, hell spilled open and then devils managed to come into this world. It's not explained how they were able to get into the world. It just explained through the anime at the beginning, that they exist in this world, and that people have been trying to get rid of them and find the source of how they exist in this world. Um, and that they have something unique and different from other animes. Apparently, in this anime, um, devils can be formed by simply fear alone, and that fear is what creates a devil in hell. Basically, that's what the anime is saying. And they came into this world from hell, or from a dark dimension if it's not hell, because it doesn't say hell. It's just say from another world, um, or maybe I missed it. Basically, they came in this world due to fear, and fear spawned them into this world. So they're born into this world, or should I say, they're born in um, another dimension, and they crossed over into this world, and they managed to come into this world by dimension hopping or whatever. But whatever it is, they came into this world through fear, and fear is what creates a devil. And it's not, there are no demons in this anime, it's all devils. So um, Denji meets this man right here, and after he destroys this devil, he meets this man. This man tells him, like, listen, you got to pay off your debts. Your father, this is when he was young, drive off next to a tree. His father's tombstone is here. Your father was a piece of shit. He hanged himself, and he has to pay off his debt to the Yakuza. And so Denji, for entire youth, say, well, okay, if my father's got to pay off his debt to the Yakuza, and he left it on me, I have to do all this in order for me to survive. So if I don't want to die, I have to do what they say and find a way to make money real quick. Um, so he comes across this little creature, this little dog type creature with a chainsaw on his head. And this creature was born out of people fearing that a dog might actually be coming after them with a chainsaw on his head. So apparently someone dreamt up, or someone had fear of a chainsaw dog somewhere, someplace. But here's the thing, a chainsaw dog is not really as terrifying like as a chainsaw person. So that's why this creature is not considered that powerful. I mean, if a dog is, maybe if it was a Rottweiler or something that's chainsaw, that would be terrifying. But someone thought of like a poodle or something, with a chainsaw, which isn't terrifying at all. So with that said, um, Chainsaw Man, or should I say Denji, before he became Chainsaw Man, realizes that this creature is injured and tells the creature to bite his arm, so that it could heal itself, because he knows that devils, if they drink the blood of human beings, he instantly heal themselves. So as long as they drink the blood of human beings, they could instantly heal their wounds. So he, knowing this, decides to reminisce on his past of when he was young here and young here, reminisce on his past, and realize this is how he met, Pochita, or Posha, however you want to say it. And so he wakes up. I wouldn't say he wakes up, but he rubs his the blood from his nose, because he has blood on his nose because he just coughed up blood, and he's coughing up blood either from the removal of one of his lungs or something, or maybe with the fact that he has internal cancer or something that he inherited from his mother's side of the family. At least that's what he believes. He looks at the door, and someone is knocking on the door, and he's summoned by the guy that's working for the Yakuza inside of this warehouse, and to kill a devil. So he goes in there with his little chainsaw dog, say, okay, so where's the devil? It turns out it's a setup. Um, a bunch of zombie-looking Yakuza guys charging at him and attacked him and killed him. So in his dreams, he sees his little chainsaw dog friend, and he makes a contract. He makes a contract in his dreams or in his minds with this little chainsaw dog friend, which is we get the first time that this actually dog talks. In real life, it never talks to him. For all his years he known him, it's never talked. But in his mind, in his spirit realm, I guess, it can talk to him. So the first time it talks, it tells him, "Listen, I'll make a contract with you. If I'll give you my heart and what I represent, so you could stay alive and come back to life. By me giving you powers, you won't be normal anymore. You'll be different, but you'll be able to survive." So he agrees to this, and thus we have the birth of the Chainsaw Man. So while they're killing him, and you throw him in a garbage can and stuff, he pops back out of the garbage can, and he's basically a new man. So they all rush at him, and all the zombies rush at him. They all jump him on top of him like a pile of corpse, and then he just basically cut every single zombie into pieces. So it's zombie bashing time. They all got sliced up like shredded cheese, um, which is perfect for Halloween season. Nothing's better than busting in a couple of zombie heads, or cutting zombies up. So zombies being the first episode is pretty sweet, especially for excellent for Halloween season. The next episode, we see him standing in front of this woman called Makima, and Makima basically tells him that he could survive with them as long as you help them to do devil hunting work. Typically, she comes from a devil hunting organization, and they would terminate his life simply because he is able to transform into a devil. Um, but she knows that he's not 100% a devil, that he's a transformed devil that's attached to a human being. Something like Devil Man or something like that. So she knows he's special in that case. So she decides to have an agreement with him to spare his life. And next thing you know, he passes out. And in the next scene, he wakes up. There was a scene before that, but this I decided to skip that scene. Go to the next scene where he wakes up after he passed out, to sitting at a table with her, ready about to eat some ramen and stuff. He's never actually had a really, really good meal, a warm meal. His entire life, he always been eating crap. So he's having a good meal with this girl that works for this organization. He's never had a girlfriend either, so he's really crushing on her super hard. So he will do anything she says, since he's never really had a girlfriend before. Um, and he's hoping that she would be his girlfriend. Little does he know that she's kind of a boss within this organization. She just tells him that she works in this organization, this building called Hunter Headquarters. And in this Hunter Headquarters, she has a room that she's in charge of, and people who are subordinates to her. So he never told her that. She never told him that he was going to be her subordinate. And then she found out later on that she's in charge of certain people, and they're under him. So she says, "Can you get along with this guy? I'm going to make him. You'll have to follow him from now on." And this guy is called Karikawa, or Hayakawa. Yeah, Hayakawa or something like that. And what happened is, I forgot the names of the certain characters. It's like you're trying to remember everything from Exception and all the name of characters and situations. Very hard to remember everything. So Hayakawa basically is set to guide Denji along in what he has to do in his life. However, that doesn't go out to be the case, because the next scene shows Hayakawa beating the shit out of him. And why Hayakawa would do something like that? Simple. He does something like that simply because he doesn't want him to go anywhere near Makima. He doesn't want him to go anywhere near Makima, because he realized Denji doesn't really care about the duties of a devil hunter, and that he's seen devil hunters before who got killed simply because they were complacent, or simply because their motivations weren't strong enough, and devils would just basically kill them and eat them and stuff because they thought it was a cool job, or you have to be serious about this job, and you have to be brutal, and you have to not give a shit about killing devils, and your motivations has to be sharp, confirmed, and on the point. But little does he know that our boy here, Denji, is sharp and confirmed and on the point, and to a fault, maybe, and narrow-minded in a certain sense, um, because his motivations have always been, you know, narrow-minded, short-sighted. Like he wants many things and he wants lots of things, but because he wants so many things, he doesn't follow or obey any rules, or nothing really is he has now latched on to anything, so he's going to listen to nothing and do whatever he wants. So in that sense, his focus is, because I'm not latched on to anything, I could do anything. That's his focus. So he attacked Hayakawa from behind and knees him in the nuts. How he knees him in the nuts is, I'm not going to show it, but basically, um, he just kicks him in the groin continuously, to the point that Makima, Hayakawa ends up on the ground like multiple times. But he doesn't even punch him and everything. He's like, he has his fish balled up like he's going to punch him and stuff. But every time he gets into the fight with the guy, he keeps aiming for his balls, which is crazy, because it's basically, the anime is basically telling you that Denji doesn't know how to fight at all. And like, his fighting and his skills of fighting and his knowledge of fighting and being know how to fight, or to this do certain type of fighting, only happens when he turns into the chainsaw man, swinging his arms and cutting people up, that type of stuff. But when he's a human being, he doesn't actually know how to fight. He might swing at you or throw your hands or something, but he's like that childish version of someone who's never actually been in a fight before their entire life. They just swing at you in hopes that, based on what they see from television, will work or something in a fight. So that's why he always uses his feet for kicking towards nuts, because he doesn't know how to fight, at least from professional level. And then next scene shows him, or should I say, next scene shows him and Hayakawa talking to Makima again, and they're both saying that they can't get along with each other. So they go on a case and they go into a building, and Hayakawa basically told them, "Listen, you piece of shit, but like, I'm tired of you not listening to what I have to say. It's like, when are you going to get it? Like, this is not the type of place that you play games at. The people here are part of the devil organization are serious. The police officers are also serious about this stuff. That these monsters have become a huge problem for society as a whole, and you have to take it seriously, because if you don't take it seriously, you're going to get yourself killed. You're going to get other people killed, and you have no one but yourself to blame with regards to this." So he tries to like convince him by putting his head up to the wall to show him the police officers below, at the same time leaning in to speak in his ear to tell him. However, Denji, like, I hear what you're saying. It's like he's a stupid punk. He doesn't understand anything because he didn't really have a parents or a father to raise him correctly. So these people are kind of going to be like the closest people you have to a family to teach him what's right and wrong. So the next scene shows him meeting another of these people, and basically, Makima says, "I'm going to introduce you to someone else that's on your team, and this person that's going to be on your team is someone that's underneath Hayakawa. So Hayakawa is in charge of your squad, and on your squad there are several people there that are part of your squad. So Hayakawa is simply in charge of your squad at the moment. Like, I'm the head of this office, but Hayakawa is basically your senior. And on your squad, you will be along with this girl called Power. And her name is Power, but people typically call her the Blood Devil. And what the Blood Devil means is that she's fascinated with anything that has to do with blood. If it has blood in it, she's crazy about it. Basically, if people fear blood so much that they're willing to not do anything in their life because they don't want to get hurt, or they want to see blood, that becomes very powerful. So anything that is blood related, she's drawn to it. A small drop of blood or a huge pool of blood or any type of thing that's going to cause blood. She's drawn to it. So she's the blood devil. But she's not just a regular devil. She's a fiend. And there are three different levels of devils in the story that I've heard so far with regards to this anime. Not the manga. There are more. But so far in this anime, there's the lower levels, the first devil types. Um, there are weaks, and then there's higher devil types that are really powerful devils that people fear a lot of things happening and coming true. And then there's the ones that are called the fiends, the things that are so terrible that that people would probably, even if they think about it, they feel like they will die from it. So as much as people hate, like say, dogs and stuff and fear dogs, and they see it like a pit bull devil, which they fear because it's incredibly terrible. They will still fear a man that looks like a chainsaw more than they will fear a devil that looks like a dog, more than that. So she's basically the higher form of any type of fear. And that's what fiends are, the higher form of any type of fear. The worst type of fear is losing your blood or seeing pools of blood. Basically anything related to death. That's how she was born, out of things related to death and blood. That's why that's more terrible than seeing a dog as a demon, because it has something to do with life and death, her fear. A Chainsaw Man was simply born out of yeah, of her not fear, but more love for his pooch, which is kind of weird. That's, in some ways, that's what makes him special. That's what makes him a hybrid, and that comes into the next type of devil that exists. There's the regular devils and the very strong devils, and then there's the fiends, which is what she is, and then there's what Denji is, which is a hybrid, which is something that fuse a devil that fuse with a person. They're fused by contracts. So you could either have contracts with a fiend like her, but she's not fused with anyone, and they simply obey you. Like she obeys Makima and the organization of devil hunters, or you could have devils who are under contract that fuse with people, or you could just have regular devils that just simply cause havoc and it's not under contract to anyone, that becomes a hassle for society and they have to kill them. So she's working with the Devil Hunter organization, Power here, as the Blood Devil, simply to destroy other devils that don't go under contract or are simply killing human beings for the simple purpose of desire of killing. So how did she come under the contract of the Devil Hunter organization? Well, it's discovered throughout the anime as I'm going along it, that after destroying a creature using her blood hammer, she blames destroying the creature on Genji here, and says that he's the one that caused it and he's the one that made her do it. And he's at fault here because he's a pig and asshole and a human being and all this bad stuff she's saying about him. I hate human beings and stuff. And it turns out why she's actually following the devil organization that hunts down devils is because there's someone more powerful than her within the organization. So what can be more powerful than a fiend? Um, Either a higher level fiend, or like either a higher arcane fiend, or something that's more powerful than a fiend that we haven't seen. And I guess the anime is basically saying that either Makima is like Denji, she's fused with a fiend or a higher devil, or Makima is fused with something much higher than a fiend, something much worse than fiends are. Basically something that's more linking towards something like fallen angels or something like that. So that's what I'm probably getting at. That's going on here. If we're going down the devil routes, she is probably fused to something like a fallen angel, or maybe even an angel itself. And devils would be scared of angels, no matter how powerful they are, unless those devils are fallen angels. Because I could see that happening if we're talking about fallen angels, which are arcane devils, and arcane devils are actually like fallen angels from simple from heaven, like archangels. I could see that being the case, that she's either fused with a fallen angel, or she's fused with an actual angel. So that would only be the only reason why someone like her would be so scared of Makima, because you could tell that Makima, even though she's doing this for the good of the Hunter organization, she comes across more as a devil herself, that there's something sleeping inside of her. And I'm assuming that's either a more powerful fiend that's fused with her, or something that's more powerful than a fiend. That's something that's, like an archangel, a fallen angel that's in her, which would make more sense for the reason why she would obey her and then look down, like in sorry eyes. She looked like, I have to obey her, and if not, she's going to kill me. So, like, this face is a representation of a face that's something that's going to murder you in a second. Of course, Denji, being a dumbass, doesn't see any of this, because he only sees a chick. No matter, even if she was to look at him like he was going to kill her, he he would basically see a chick looking at her like he's going to kill her, and he's never had a chick before, so that might actually be a turn on for him, which might actually like screw up Makima's mental, idea of killing him. Like, what's wrong with this dude? Can't he think about anything other than booze and want to get with women? She might simply spare Denji simply because he's so narrow-minded, and like realize he's so stupid that he doesn't realize how much danger he's in being in her presence. So that's what I'm getting from her. Like, Denji has no idea how much of an ant he is compared to her. Um, yeah, and that's we'll go on to the next scene, and the next scene presents the next scene present I guess the power here telling Denji, like, listen, I have this little cat I want to save. It's the only pet I have, just like the dog used to have that had the chainsaw. And it's being held captive by a devil. And she says inside this house it's being held captive by a devil. It's like, if you help me with getting this cat, I will let you cop a feel. And Denji's like, really? If if I help you to get your cat, you will help me cop a feel? Like, it's like, yeah. It's like, and I just shake my head after I heard this, and I'm like, really, is this all this guy thinks about, copping feels? I'm like, all right, fine, go get cop your feel. It's like, so I watched the anime, and that's the only thing I would say is the bad part about this anime. I was focused so much on this guy keep focusing on, grabbing women's boobies and stuff. Like, that doesn't sit well with me at all, and it's not motivation enough for this guy to, get off his ass and do what he has to do. Um, but he's still a punk, and he's never had a girlfriend. That's why his mind is in that. He's a teenager, for crying out loud. That's the way teenage boys behave. So yeah, at least that's what the anime is going at the moment. Before, as it gets into it, he's obviously going to mature out of those behaviors. But for right now, he's in the mercies of this bat demon. And this bat demon is about to eat him and says, I haven't had food. My arm is busted. I need to repair my arms. And the bat demon basically spoke to the blood demon and said, okay, you did well. And then the blood demon basically say, well, where's my cat? I say, your cat is right here. I'm going to give it back to you, and I'm going, instead of giving it back to her, um, he basically eats the cat. I'll leave that to your imagination. um, and moving on forward from that, we basically see I guess I guess you could say a flashback of some sort, with regards to the blood demon. And this was before she got controlled by the Hunter organization, or put a contract with regards to them, which, she was running around in the forest and killing animals, killing people, you know, anything that has blood in it. She just basically killed it simply so she could see blood, so she could drink his blood. She started with bears and animals. She probably killed a couple of humans, regardless, but eventually came across this cat, and this cat was a skinny looking cat, and it was about to die and hardly had any blood inside of it. But that's no good for the blood demon. It's like, what would I want to do with a cat that hardly has any meat or any bones or any blood inside of it, that's about to die? We need to feed you so that I could eat you. At least that's where her mind was going. So eventually she feeds the cat, and the cat ended up being this fat looking cat here. And she feeds it so much food and end up turning into a fat cat. It's like, okay, you're nice and plump now. Now I can eat you. But here's the thing. The cat wasn't scared of her or anything. The cat basically saw her as her master, um, and is thankful for saving her. It says, "You're weird. I was about to kill you, and yet you're still coming next to me, like I'm your mother or something for saving your life." It's like I hate this type of feeling. Maybe this has something to do with me being, in this human form or something, to have these emotions, or maybe simply because I'm in a female, yeah, and my motherly instincts or something like that's going off. But she doesn't actually say those things. She just said it might be something that has to do with human emotions. Um, I'm just taking it from my point of view that it might actually feel like it's more like a motherly instinct to protect a child type of thing. So the bat demon eventually eats her, eats the cat, and the chainsaw man basically saying, "This is bullshit." And like, I want to cop my feel. And like, the bat demon say, "You stole," and it's like, well, you didn't just eat the cat. You grabbed the damn blood demon here, and then you ate her as well, while she was in mourning of her cat being eaten. And that's no good for me. I have to cop my feel. Like, I won't be satisfied until you're dead and the cat is saved. Like, so how dare you? It's like you ruin my chances of copping feel. So it's so weird that his motivations for actually killing this thing is simply cop feels and stuff. But it doesn't matter anymore because the cat is dead and the blood demon is dead at this point. I know the blood demon is dead, and the cat probably isn't dead either. They're probably inside of his stomach, um, and he's burning. And the bat demon is about to die right now. He got his arm. He got his new arm, but then eventually Chainsaw Man cut off his new arm again, and now he's one arm man again. Um, he did this whole bat thing with his sound effects, but that doesn't make any difference because he died. Chainsaw Man at the end basically destroyed him, um, destroyed every part of him. Like cut him up into nothing but sausage and cheese. Um, he went everywhere, and his guts came flying out, and that's pretty much the end of this anime. Him getting destroyed and falling to the ground, and Chainsaw Man basically saying like, "God damn it, I didn't get my feel." Um, so that's how the third episode ended, with the Bat Demon getting his comeuppance and getting destroyed. Seems very much like One Punch Man, but how the anime is done, like One Punch Man, but it's not exactly like One Punch Man. It feels more like My Hero Academia as well. So that was basically um, Chainsaw Man. Very bloody, very violent, um, showing the type of society that this guy lives in, showing the type of players that are going to be popping up into the show, showing the type of level of demons, the level of devils that exist, and showing us that possibly Makima here might actually be an angel. Maybe not even a regular angel, but an archangel fused with her inside, which will eventually bring fear to any type of devil that exists anyway. Or it could be even something even worse than that, rather than an archangel being inside her. It could be something that is a different type of archangel, like a devil type of archangel. So I wouldn't say it was worse than that because both are worse. Archangels from the good side are in some sense bad when it comes to devils, and devils would fear them. But on the good side, when it comes to people, people obviously would obey them to a fault, because they're very authoritarian type, and you don't disturb the peace, and they're willing to kill you for it. But on the fallen angel side, they don't follow rules, but they are very chaotic, but they're still powerful. So it could be that we're having an archangel situation here going on within Makima, or she has some type of contract connected to her with regards to uh, a higher level fiend or something much higher level than a fiend. No matter how you look at it, there's something going on with Makima that's higher than any Fiend type that exists. Otherwise, she wouldn't have such powerful control under a Fiend that's more powerful than a devil. So she has to be either the higher level of that of a Fiend, or she has to be beyond that of a Fiend, which is the type of devil that hasn't been shown yet on the show, that is beyond that of a Fiend. The blood demon, the blood devil understands it. The Fiend understands this. Um, However, Genji doesn't understand this, and I guess you could say the eyes tell it. The eyes tell it. Like fiends have probably has cross on their eyes, and whatever she is probably don't have cross on their eyes. They have circles. The red in their eyes are circle like they could hypnotize you type, and that's probably the higher definitive description of the higher level. Because I was looking at the eyes of the bat demon or the bat devil, and the eyes of the bat devil seem to be one constant color. Let me go back to it. It seemed to be one constant color, red. But when it goes to things like fiends moving forward, those things seem to be two colors, which are yellow and red. Now maybe I'm just looking into it or looking too far into it, but it seems like anyone who's like a devil like is has a yellow and red eye. So she's definitely a devil type, yellow and red. But what type of devil is she? If a fiend is listening to her, then she has to be higher than a fiend level. So it's another type of devil that hasn't been shown, that's fused with this person, because either Makima is under contract with someone else and she is a fiend herself, a higher level fiend and a higher level devil, and she's under contract with someone else, or there's someone fused with her and a higher level devil has been fused with her. But if that's the case, if a higher level devil was fused with her, then that would be the same with Genji. A devil fused with him to turn him into the Chainsaw Man, which means his eyes would have turned as well into yellow like theirs. If there's fusion, I mean, if it's not fusion, the eyes would be yellow like hers. But if it's fusion, the eyes should have been yellow like like Makima's. But his eyes is not yellow. So the fusion doesn't change the eyes with a devil and a human being whatsoever. The yellow eyes is probably a representation of them being devils themselves. The yellows is probably supposed to represent devils, not contract with devils. Because if it represent contract with devils, then that means this yellow in the eyes of circle represent a person who has the contract, and the person that has the cross in the eyes represent the person that is controlled under the contract. But as you see, that's not the case, because in this scene, which was a flashback of um, the power of the blood devil, she already had the cross in her eyes before she even got under control of Makima and the Hunter organization, which means that throws that out of the window of them actually, the yellow actually being contracts. So it can only mean one thing. Makima is a devil herself, and probably has always been a devil, and she's a higher form of a devil, but she's not fused with anyone, any human being, that she is a devil. If they both have the same yellow eyes. Because if that was the case, if she was a specialist or a hybrid, then that means our boy Genji would have been the same. So either Makima is a devil herself, or she's the opposite of what a devil is, and she's an angel, a very powerful one at that. And the cross in the eyes represents fiends and higher ups, and the circles in the eyes represents angels and higher ups. Either that's the case, or she's just a higher devil type. She's not fused. She is a devil. But that's it for this video. and it's been like 3 hours and change. And for Chainsaw Man, I would say Chainsaw Man gets the 8 category. For the story wise, the story is not that good. The animation very good. The characters are good, very interesting. The story might develop into something that's superior to that of Exception. But at the moment, since there have only been 3 episodes released in October so far, because October isn't over, um, I can't really say that actually is better than Exception at the moment. The anime and the fighting is better than Exception. Um, but for right now, I would say Exception still is just 4 more points higher than it. But at an 8, starting at an 8 for the first 3 episodes, that's a very good thing. So Chainsaw Man is my top one, even though it's lower in the points um, for October. And after you watch Chainsaw Man, then you could go watch something like Exception. Or you could do the reverse. Or you could pick Housing Complex C. But be aware, if you're going to pick Housing Complex C, the ending probably won't please you whatsoever at all. If you want a definitive conclusion towards the story, um, that doesn't have it. Like if you want real horror anime, it's probably in there, and you'll probably get your money's worth more than you would with Chainsaw Man and with Exception. I guarantee you that. But the ending is not going to please you. You're going to be pleased with Exception's ending, and you're going to be pleased with watching Chainsaw Man. You probably won't be pleased with watching Housing Complex C. I sure wasn't, and I expected more from that anime, and I refused to put it within my list simply because I don't use children as a form of good or evil to say things like that. And I find that to be repulsive in a certain sense. So yeah, but if you're all about that, I would say the horror is there and the paranoia is there. It's like they will never be something I'm into. But if you really want to check out another good horror anime, Housing Complex C is it. I just did like the ending, so I didn't put it here. Otherwise, that's something you can check out as well. So those are the 2 I have for October of 2022. You could watch both during the holiday season or during October 31st for your Halloween treat. They're both good. They're both awesome. And one has a good conclusion and one is still an ongoing series. So that's it for this video. I'll check you out next time. And I believe Warframe come November, the end of third week of November, will be a Warframe Legacy Lore video. So there won't be any anime for November of 2022. Warframe Legacy Lore will be the anime. Will be the video coming for 2022. The first Legacy Lore was done back in August, and the next Legacy Lore will be done in November of 2022. The next anime will be done in January of 2023, because in December of 2022, after the Warframe Legacy Lore is done in November, the next manga video will be done, review of the next upcoming manga that are going to be released in December of 2022. And that's what that video of December is going to be. Me reading manga from November into December to see what manga is good for the end of the year of 2022 to read before 2023 comes. So that's it for this video. Thank you for listening, and you can subscribe if you want and support what I'm doing. But yeah, Makima is a freak, man. Like, I'm kind of scared. I think she's far worse than I think, or I think there are bigger players that are going on that the game, that the anime is not telling us about. And I believe it's a blind, to be honest with you, that she's really is not that terrible at all. That someone is far more terrible than her and is using her. And she probably really wants to get out of that terrible thing that's happening with her. Like, why attach Denji? Why attach Denji to her? Why make Denji like her if she doesn't have a redeeming quality? If it turns out that she doesn't have any redeeming quality, then this was going to be one of the perfect villains for 2023 coming up, because this is just released in 2022 of October. So she might actually turn out to be one of the perfect villains moving forward, because breaking his heart and everything, and doing even worse than that would be something that would crush this guy, and turning out that she was a bad person, and then turning against her friends and using all this. It would have to be something to a sinister level in order for it to turn out to be that case. But I don't believe the anime is going that case. I believe there is something going on with Makima, and she has power over other fiends and over other devils. But I believe it's more like attached to something or someone that's far more powerful than her. That's what I'm seeing when I'm looking at her, when she's looking down on the blood, um, you know, the blood devil, to make her a being. It's like the blood devil knows something. The blood devil knows that Makima knows something. And the blood devil knows that if you disobey her, you might have to face the consequences of the person that she answers to. And I think she knows that as well. Um, it's trying to intimidate to show that Makima is bad, but actually might be someone far worse than her. So at least for the moment, that's where the anime is going. So Chainsaw Man is pretty good. It's brutal as hell, and it holds no punches. And it's kind of hilarious in certain ways, but it really needs to ease up on the whole copping feel thing. Um, because that if that keeps going with on episode after episode after episode, it becomes convoluted. It would no longer be anything about kicking ass and taking names. It will simply be about being an annoyance, and you don't want annoyance in your anime. So that's it. That's all I got to say for this video. It's been 3 hours and almost 30 minutes. I'm out, and next time Warframe Legacy Lore, November 2022.